In Naruto, I start with a Seireitei. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 126 My home was stolen by ghosts. Dawn broke. The bloody, eerie night was dispelled. The demons were gone. The sun rose. Orochimaru dragged his weary, aching body back. This body, already weakened by anemia, had been further ravaged by the falling cherry blossoms, and was nearing its end. But it didn't matter, the Atagakure laboratory always had replacement containers, as well as all the necessary equipment and materials for the reincarnation process. Beneath his feet was a giant python with a bulging belly, supporting him as it slithered rapidly across the ground. Beside him was another giant python, and Kabuto Yakushi stood atop its head. Looking out from atop the snake's head, Kabuto sensed something was amiss. Atagakure was eerily quiet, and a faint, metallic scent of blood drifted in the air. Lord Orochimaru, Kabuto warned. Orochimaru also smelled the blood. His already pale face became even more bloodless, and a strong sense of foreboding washed over him. 2 minutes later, looking at the devastated village, with its shattered corpses piled up in the blood-soaked mud, and ninjas standing around like wilted eggplants, Orochimaru frowned. Their faces were limp and pale, still bearing traces of terror, yet strangely, they bore no wounds, a stark contrast to the corpses on the ground. He couldn't fathom what kind of attack the village had suffered to cause this state. The stark contrast between the dead and the living was too jarring. What happened? Orochimaru asked in a low voice. It's a demon. A demon has come. Orochimaru froze, realizing he hadn't brought back the headless monster. Then, shocked, he understood the meaning behind the words. Keep the news under wraps. No one is allowed to leak this. Kabuto, having processed this shocking news, issued a gag order for Orochimaru. Where's Kimimaro? Where's Guren? Orochimaru's snake-like eyes scanned the piled-up corpses, but he couldn't find Kimimaro or Guren's bodies. They're in the lab. It seems something's happened to them. Sakuan, one of the Sound Four, stepped forward and, meeting Orochimaru's sinister gaze, answered with a forced smile, and the lab was emptied by demons. A deathly silence fell. What did he mean by the lab being emptied? By demons? This was unbelievable. He quickly walked to the lab, looked at the collapsed, sunken passageway, took a deep breath, and pushed open the iron door to peek inside. Behind the first iron door, empty. Orochimaru's face twitched, and a fleeting, almost supernatural, flush appeared on his pale face. Unconvinced, he pushed open the second iron door. Behind the second iron door, empty. Orochimaru gasped in shock. He pushed open all the iron doors, and the scenes inside were identical, completely empty, as if he had returned to the early days of the Sound Village. Although Orochimaru had established countless dens throughout the ninja world, the resources and scale of those laboratories were far inferior to this one, his main base. Half of the experimental funding that Shimura Danzo contributed to him each year was spent on this laboratory, and now it was empty, not even a single test tube remained. All those dazzling arrays of equipment, those expensively built devices, those manuscripts and logs he had kept day and night, all had vanished. Only one intact nutrient tank filled with liquid remained, containing the skin membrane of Orochimaru's face, soaking inside. That's my own remains. Orochimaru's eyes widened in fury as he stared at his swollen, soaked body. His mouth slowly opened, uttering a muttered sound that was both a cry and a laugh. The demon moved my lab. And left me a piece of my own remains? Tell me, would you believe me? What began as a muttered cry turned into a sinister, morbid hoarseness, a voice thick with an overwhelming killing intent. Even when he accidentally drank poisoned blood and nearly died, or when the headless monster was stolen by an uninvited guest, almost resulting in a slow, agonizing execution, Orochimaru had never been this enraged. Now, every cell in his body radiated a murderous intent that seemed ready to devour anyone. Wait a minute, where did the demon get this remains? It looks remarkably well preserved. I don't believe it, Lord Orochimaru. Meeting those bloodshot eyes, Kabuto Yakushi involuntarily shivered. After a moment's thought, he calmly replied, "But the truth may require some investigation. First, we should question Gin and Ichimaru." Kabuto pointed to a room opposite. In a corner of the room, layers of crimson crystals sealed Ichimaru. Ichimaru, sealed by the crystals, had a ghostly black light emanating from his eyes, exuding an evil aura. His mouth was open, emitting a greedy and inhuman roar. The one manipulating the crystals to seal him was Gin, whose hair danced wildly, chakra surged wildly, and veins bulged on his arms and face. "Something's wrong with them, Lord Orochimaru," Kabuto said with certainty. One looked as if he had lost his mind and wanted to devour people, the other's chakra aura was surging, his heart was pounding, and his blood flow was more than 4 times that of a normal person. Orochimaru wasn't blind, he was simply heartbroken over the loss of his hard-earned fortune and couldn't see anything else for a moment. Forcibly suppressing his anger and depression, he naturally noticed Ichimaru and Gin's unusual behavior. "Seal off the lab. Don't let anyone in or out. I'll handle them," Orochimaru ordered in a low voice. "You go and entertain the guests from Konoha. Keep a close eye on Kakashi. As for that root successor, be relatively polite." The lab had been ransacked, and rebuilding it would be extremely expensive. Since Shimura Danzo was dead, future funding would have to come from Fujiwara. Kabuto understood Orochimaru's meaning. He manipulated 2 giant pythons, sending them out and into an empty iron doorway. The pythons spat out 2 unconscious figures covered in slime. Kakashi was genuinely unconscious. Fujiwara had been awake for a while, manipulating his heartbeat and breathing to feign unconsciousness. He first drew a syringe and injected Kakashi with a drug intravenously to ensure that even if Kakashi woke up, he would be completely weak and powerless. Then he chained him behind the iron door. He also injected Fujiwara with a drug, but only half the dose, and considerately brought him a chair to sit on, quietly waiting for the 2 to slowly wake up from their coma. "Where is this?" Fujiwara let Kabuto handle him, calculating the time to wake up before Kakashi. He glanced at the empty room and the masked man in front of him. "You're Orochimaru's man. What do you want with me?" "Lord Orochimaru wants to know more information about the useful demon," Kabuto asked gently. "The headless demon was stolen, so Orochimaru's deal with Root has naturally failed. There's no need for us to continue." Fujiwara firmly refused to reveal any unnecessary information. "Don't rush to refuse. Although an unexpected incident occurred during the transaction, Lord Orochimaru is willing to maintain the good friendship with Root that existed during the Shimura Danzo era." Kabuto's eyes darted around, and he smiled. "Since you have the opportunity to take charge of Root, you should also want to become Shimura Danzo's successor, rather than just a puppet manipulated by the Hokage." Fujiwara frowned and remained silent. "The transaction failed, and you lost such an important demon. It won't be easy for you to explain to the Hokage when you go back. Coincidentally, Lord Orochimaru also has clues about demons, which can be exchanged with the information held by Root." Kabuto enticed, "With Lord Orochimaru's secret help outside, I believe you will be more successful and one day truly control the Anbu." How insidious. This bespectacled guy is no good. How could Fujiwara resist Kabuto's persuasive charm? He was pried open. Chapter 127. My subordinates were transformed into pitch black, endless, bottomless darkness. In this abyss of despair, there was no light, only a thirst for blood, and a name branded deep within his blood, seemingly ingrained in his soul, a name that could never be forgotten or resisted. Kibutsuji Musen. "Who am I?" Ichimaru let out a low, inhuman growl from his throat. Every cell in his body breathed greedily and desperately, as if controlled by the instinct to feed, devouring and chewing away all reason, leaving only the purest desire. Blood equals food equals evolution. Ichimaru opened his eyes, a dark light surfacing in his pupils. Countless cracks appeared on his body, and countless white bone blades, intertwined with black patterns, burst forth in an instant, their chaotic and terrifying spikes piercing the crimson crystal that bound him. Thud. Crack. 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 Crystals shattered everywhere, and chaotic bone spikes snaked out, like a blooming flower of death enveloping the crimson lotus. Every bone spike on its petals exuded the most ferocious bloodlust. As the crimson lotus raised her hand, her chakra surged wildly, the turbulent chakra even causing Orochimaru, standing nearby, to glance at her sideways. Her hair danced wildly, and the veins on her skin seemed to come alive, each one like countless tiny snakes crawling across her body. Though she stood still, Still the same person, she seemed to have transformed into some kind of terrifying monster. Her heart pounded with each breath, her pores closed, and crystal scales appeared and clung to her body. With the slightest movement, the surrounding air trembled. The crimson lotus twisted, the red scales covering her body twisting together like thick steel cables. With a combined force of her muscles and crystal scales, she slammed into Kimimura's chest with terrifying power. Crimson lotus caught upon thorns that were about to strike, twisting them in one fell swoop, instantly snapping them into pretzel shape. The crystal scales on her body twisted and shattered inch by inch, revealing charred skin beneath, as if slashed by lightning. Thud. Crimson Lotus and Kimimura were both sent flying backward. Kimimura's broken bones and muscles rapidly healed, while Crimson Lotus's charred skin peeled away, revealing new, tender flesh. The swift exchange of blows and their rapid healing made Orochimaru's eyelids twitch. Although their attack methods seemed somewhat crude and immature to him, their ferocious aura and inhuman physical vitality truly astonished him. These were Kimimura and Crimson Lotus? How could they have undergone such a complete transformation in just one day? Orochimaru squinted, almost mistaking it for a successful experiment in revitalizing his own body, or a leap forward in the improvement of his cursed seal. The problem is, nothing happened. I didn't do anything before I left. Black markings emerged from Kimimura's bones, a strange power swirling between his bone blades, making even Kimimura, despite losing his mind, wield the blades with a beautiful rhythm, like swift lightning, yet also like silent breathing. One is a rhythm devoid of reason. The other is a rage-retaining reason. He's been modified. Is this still my subordinate? Orochimaru stared at the empty laboratory, at his two seemingly familiar yet strange subordinates locked in a fierce battle. For a moment, the most brilliant mind in the ninja world was engulfed in a terrifying mental storm of conspiracy theories. Why modify my subordinates? And then leave them for me to deal with instead of taking them away? Goodwill? Malice? Surely it's not payment for emptying my lab. Are demons such a civilized species? Orochimaru was utterly perplexed. He watched Kimimura and Yurin's bodies repeatedly injured and healed, their vitality almost demonic. A burning, greedy light shone in his eyes. Enough of this futile thought. Once he placed his two subordinates on the lab table for a pathological autopsy, everything would be clear. Orochimaru stepped forward, blocking Kimimura and Yurin's path. He raised both hands, and countless coiled venomous snakes spewed from his sleeves. Stop. Tell me what happened here? His sinister voice pierced Yurin and Kimimura's ears. Honglian raised her hand, erecting a crystal barrier to block the gushing venomous snakes. The rage in her eyes gradually subsided. She stopped and looked at Orochimaru, complaining, Kimimura has gone mad. He kills anyone he sees. Several ninjas in the village have had their hearts shattered by him, and he's drained all their blood. Kimimura's eyes were dark. The moment he heard Orochimaru's voice, his body suddenly froze. He let out a hissing roar, and an exaggerated gash appeared on his chest. Countless bone blades flashed with lightning as they emerged. The gushing venomous snakes were all cut down, and the burning smell filled the air. Is that so, Kimimura? Orochimaru narrowed his eyes, his face devoid of emotion, and spoke in a hoarse, deep voice devoid of joy or sorrow. Answer me, Kimimura. Veins bulged on Kimimura's forehead. An instinctive urge drove him to kill the man before him, to drink every drop of his blood, blood containing immense power. Consuming it would allow him to evolve, and perhaps hear that name calling to him. But his body seemed to be under control. Some long-forgotten memory was gradually surfacing in his mind, causing him to struggle painfully, even resisting his own instincts. In the empty corner of the wall, a patch of inconspicuous mortar clung to the wall, a bacterium disguised as wall mortar, monitoring the area from afar. In the shade of a forest not far from Itagakure, a group of people, having shed their black demon robes, stood behind Kaguya Nami, gazing into the distance towards Itagakure. The mirror that Mayuri Kuratsuchi made using bacteria hung between two trees, like a curtain tied between the branches, broadcasting Orochimaru and Kimimura's conversation live. President Nami seems to have been certain from the beginning that this Kimimura could be brought back to his senses by Orochimaru. As far as I know, that should be extremely difficult, right? Mayuri Kuratsuchi and Kakashibo were truly close, and he had a very deep understanding of the existence of demons. He knew that demons transformed by the president's blood would find it difficult to control their bloodlust, let alone regain their sanity and humanity. Humanity is a beautiful quality, and demons are deprived of this beautiful species from the very beginning of their transformation. The others were also watching the screen. To be honest, they had little interest in humans, but they were still somewhat interested in the existence of demons. Ninjas are deformed creatures, and this is a distorted world. But even in the dirtiest and ugliest world, there are often rare and precious things, even if these precious things are products of distortion and deformity. It doesn't stop this flower from exuding a unique fragrance. In this world, this flower is called bonds, the meaning of a ninja's existence. I may not agree with it, but I'm willing to appreciate it. Clearly, Kimimaro didn't disappoint me. Only then can Orochimaru fully receive my gift. Everyone understood their leader perfectly, silently adding in their hearts, and better fulfill the script the leader has laid out for him. Kaguya Nami quietly admired the scene reflected in the curtain. Every word she uttered seemed to contain philosophy and poetry. Life is not lacking in beauty, but rather in eyes that can see it. Chapter 128. All of Chairman Nami's gifts had already been secretly priced. Life is not lacking in beauty, but rather in eyes that can see it. And what's even more fortunate is that we can present this beauty in a more wonderful way in this world. Kaguya Nami's words were heartfelt, filled with a noble sense of mission. This must be the meaning of her coming into this world. The bond between the director and the world, to make the world more wonderful. It is our honor to follow behind the president and witness the beauty of this world. The group exchanged glances and said in unison from the bottom of their hearts. The beautiful scene on the curtain was playing out before everyone's eyes. Do you remember what I told you before? Living itself has no meaning, but if you keep living, you might encounter interesting people and interesting things, just like you encountered that flower, and I encountered you. Orochimaru looked at the struggling and bewildered Kimimaro. His handsome and cold face was covered with twisted blood vessels, 2 crimson dots between his brows, and a vertical crack exuded an evil aura. He walked towards Kimimaro without any hesitation, his equally handsome and cold face curving into a sinister arc. Kimimaro, is blood the meaning of your survival now? Answer me. Orochimaru stretched out his pale arm from his sleeve, his black nails lightly scratching his arm, drawing a bloody gash. He raised it and held it horizontally between Kimimaro's nose and mouth, letting the fragrance of blood stimulate Kimimaro. Kimimaro struggled to open his mouth, his perfectly white teeth gleaming coldly. Ugly, greedy saliva dripped from the corners of his lips in glistening beads. Blood? No. I am Kimimaro, I am Kimimaro, I am Kimimaro. I have only one reason for living, to become Orochimaru-sama's vessel. Kimimaro howled from his throat, inhaling the fragrance of blood in his nostrils. His tongue seemed to already taste the coveted blood, so he howled and bit off his own tongue, letting the gushing blood flow through his mouth, the surging, metallic taste filling his mouth. That was his own blood. Even if he drank all his own blood, he would never let his teeth touch Orochimaru-sama's blood, because for Kimimaro, Orochimaru-sama was the only meaning and the sole value of his existence. Kimimaro remembered the black cane in the night, the cane seemingly torn in two by blood, and that exquisitely sinister face. Muzan Kibatsuji. It was this name that turned him into a demon. Lord Orochimaru, I've been turned into a demon. Kimimaro, with his powerful will, suppressed his inner thirst for blood. He stared intently at Orochimaru, his lips parted, bloodied, his severed tongue now fully grown. He said excitedly and confidently, I may not be able to become Lord Orochimaru's vessel, but Lord Orochimaru can dissect and study me. Perhaps this body holds the secret to immortality that Lord Orochimaru hopes to uncover. Gion, watching from behind, felt a chill run down her spine. Even though her body had undergone some strange modification she didn't understand, making her immune to heat and cold, she still felt goosebumps rising from the cold. Orochimaru licked away the blood trickling from his arm, his pale face framed by blood-stained lips. He let out a hoarse, sickly laugh, then slowly turned to Gion behind him and said in a sinister tone, Do you think I should dissect Kimimaro? Gion stood frozen, stunned. After a long pause, she stammered, Lord Orochimaru, actually my body too. Gion finally decided to confess to Lord Orochimaru the shameful memory of her body being violated by that demon man last night. The bacteria clinging to the wall silently died, turning into a truly lifeless piece of plaster, quietly peeling off and falling to the dark ground. Under the shade of the trees in the forest, hanging curtains fell in the wind, turning into mottled, fragmented fungal carpets that blended into the muddy ground. The figures watching from all around had long since vanished. Kakashi awoke from his unconsciousness to find himself in a strange, confined room, but he seemed to be treated differently. Why am I so weak and chained against a cold iron gate, while Fujigaya, also from Konoha, is comfortably seated in a chair, his limbs seemingly unrestrained, a steaming cup of tea in his hand? You're finally awake. Fujigaya's biological clock tells him that it should already be dark outside, yet Kakashi is only just waking up. Where is this? Kakashi asks, frowning. I guess it's one of Orochimaru's secret bases, Fujigaya replies calmly. Kakashi recalls the events before he fainted, especially Orochimaru's elaborate maneuvers, and his anger flares. Orochimaru suddenly launched an attack. Orochimaru used the Orochimaru substitution technique to escape the battlefield. Orochimaru bound him, unconscious, back to his secret base. Perhaps a side effect of the high dose of anesthesia, Kakashi feels his mind isn't quite working properly. He feels he might have missed many important moments while he was unconscious. Kabuto, wearing a mask, pushed open the door and walked in. He glanced at the awakened Kakashi, then without a word, pulled out a syringe and inserted it into Kakashi's neck, administering another dose of anesthesia. Kakashi stared wide-eyed, trying to memorize the masked man's silhouette, silently cursing Orochimaru's ancestors. Since Fujigaya's mouth had been pried open, and Kabuto already knew some of Konoha's confidential information about demons, there was no need to bother with Kakashi. He could let him sleep through the night and leave Itagakure. Consider it a nightmare. When he woke up, he should be back in the warm village of Konoha. I'll send you away. Kabuto summoned two giant pythons. One swallowed the unconscious Kakashi back into its belly, while the other swallowed the calm, unresisting Fujigaya as well. Remember our deal? Fujigaya said coldly to Kabuto before being swallowed by the python. Of course, Minister Fujigaya. Kabuto Yakashi replied with a smile, believing he had lured Fujigaya's deep-seated ambitions. Another fool who can't recognize his own abilities. Kabuto sneered inwardly, manipulating the two giant pythons to leave the territory of Itagakure under the cover of night. Fujigaya, lying flat on the snake's belly, also grinned sinisterly. Everything is proceeding smoothly according to Chairman Nami's plan. This snake has finally swallowed all the poison bait. Hey, I hope he can bear it when he learns the truth one day. The trajectory of the two giant pythons on the ground seemed to be manipulated by Kabuto Yakashi, but in reality, someone had planned everything for this winding path in advance. Every gift that Chairman Nami secretly bestowed had already been priced for the future, the dark side of the ninja world. Fujigaya, thank you to Big Brother If, for the 1,500-point reward. Thank you to Different Black Charcoal, for the 1,500-point reward. Thank you to Naimo Wenqing Chang, for the 1,500-point reward. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, The Plans for the Ghost King's Palace. Finally, someone has learned the ghost's weakness. You have achieved the achievement, Grasping Orochimaru's Fate by the Tail. Grasping Orochimaru's Fate by the Tail. Snakes control their balance and direction through their tails, and through your gifts, you have secretly woven a net of fate onto his tail, controlling Orochimaru's path. P.S. It is said that the Ouroboros symbolizes immortality. Gained achievement points 1,500. You have achieved the achievement, Stealing Orochimaru's Laboratory. The stolen experiment from Orochimaru's laboratory is perhaps the most valuable and wealthy place in the ninja world, but it was emptied by a group of demons. P.S. Demons understand science too. Gained achievement points 1,000. You have achieved the achievement. Orochimaru's Reward. Orochimaru's Reward. You generously gifted Orochimaru a present, even concealing the secret to immortality within it, and tirelessly wove 23 branches of destiny for him in secret, each one thrilling and dramatic. In the script of the ninja world, Orochimaru bears the director's deep favoritism. P.S. Do you remember? On the night Kaguya massacred the clan, Orochimaru saved Kimimura's life, but it doesn't matter, you never held it against him. You are a person who repays evil with good. Gained achievement points 2,000. You have achieved the achievement. Back in Hazuki Castle, Director Nami opened the achievement record. For some reason, he felt that today's subtitles were particularly sarcastic, as if they were subtly mocking him for being petty. Kaguya Nami felt wronged, but without changing his expression, he browsed through the achievement records related to Itagakure. Apart from Kimimura and Yurin, who had given him achievement points. The rest all came from Orochimaru. A leek harvesting tycoon? No, a treasure trove of achievements, Orochimaru. Most importantly, Orochimaru is also very grateful and knows how to give back. Kaguya Nami glanced at the achievement point statistics at the bottom. They had quietly risen back to 7,244 points. A high return rate. Kaguya Nami was in a good mood. He secretly decided that he should continue to increase his investment and care for Orochimaru in the future. Should I try my luck with a lottery or keep saving? Kaguya Nami closed the lottery wheel. He decided to take some time to think it over, not rushing to make a decision. After all, he had already passed the most insecure period at the beginning. Director Nami now considered himself a qualified behind-the-scenes manipulator. He could slow down the urgency of improving his strength a little and shift his focus to filing in the framework of the script's background, enriching and fleshing out the script's flesh and blood. In other words, the high walls surrounding the ninja world, the Seireitei perched atop the sky, Hueco Mundo hidden beyond the world, and the true Demon King's palace, the infinite castle, which has always been concealed in the present world. These colossal outlines, which will inevitably surface with each expansion update and be discovered by the persistent human explorers, should be systematically constructed. The construction of the Seireitei requires a massive amount of achievement points to unlock in Project Behind the Clouds. Kaguya Nami has already grasped some of the details regarding the construction of Hueco Mundo, but it's not the most urgent matter at the moment. Moreover, how could the arrival of Lost Notches and the Espada be without that person? Therefore, the most crucial and pressing aspect of the current expansion for the ninja world is naturally the Demon King's palace, the Infinite Castle. Not a miniature, rudimentary version of the Infinite Castle in the Box of Elysium, but a truly colossal, time-worn, disguised, and real entity that has always been hidden in the present world. Where would be the best place to put the demon's headquarters? One that would allow ninjas to discover it discreetly and unexpectedly, while also sending a chilling shockwave through the world. Kaguya Nami stared at the miniature ninja world sand table created by Mayuri Kuratsuchi on the table. She observed the contours of the mountains and rivers, the outlines of various large and small factions and villages, her gaze unconsciously drifting to a particular spot. It certainly looks suitable. Kaguya Nami mentally added this to her next priority list. With a flick of her finger, a small black flag representing the demon moon pierced straight into the boundary marker. The perspective shifts back to Tagakure. The timeline advances to 3 days later. In the once empty laboratory, some basic equipment has finally been replaced. On a cold experimental table, Kimimaro lies quietly. A deep surgical incision ripped open his chest, from which dark blood gushed forth. A removed heart was rapidly regenerating. Such vitality that humans envy. In some ways, demons are indeed a superior species to humans. Orochimaru licked his lips greedily. Several trays sat beside him, each holding a freshly beating heart. He carefully placed these hearts into culture tanks, where he would conduct various comparative experiments to observe the changes in cell activity and the mechanisms of their existence. One tray of hearts, held out of the window by Orochimaru and exposed to sunlight, rapidly shrank and dehydrated within 2 breaths, instantly burning into a pool of black ashes. Terrifying vitality, near immortality, yet possessing the simplest and most fatal weakness? What an extremely contradictory and bizarre existence. Orochimaru wrote down the characteristic of sunlight-induced death in his experimental record, while his thoughts drifted to, no wonder all the known information about demons so far indicates that they appear at night, and some demons even retain the habit of using umbrellas at night. Demons have such a significant flaw. Demons that cannot be killed by swords and blades, yet only need a ray of sunlight to turn into smoke, Orochimaru pondered. He rubbed his fingers together, letting the gritty black ash trickle down his skin, before slowly turning to look at Kimimaro, whose chest wound had already healed. He said in a sinister voice, "You said you were transformed into a demon by a drop of blood injected into your brow? Right?" Kimimaro finished dressing and stood up, pulling a test tube from his sleeve. The tube contained crimson blood, which he drank in one gulp, greedily licking the blood stains from his lips. His gaze held undisguised disgust for the sunlight streaming through the window. He was now a demon who could only walk at night. Yes, that drop of blood contains a terrifying and eerie power that can transform a person into a demon, while simultaneously unleashing the power bestowed upon them within the blood. Of course, a demon who successfully transforms will be enslaved by the bloodline, craving to drink fresh blood and subject to his control. But not everyone can successfully transform into a demon. If they cannot withstand the power contained within that drop of blood, their body will explode and they will die. This information was naturally imprinted into Kimimura's soul when he transformed into a demon. He was the progenitor of demons, Muzan Kibatsuji. Even though he has now regained his sanity and seems to have broken free from some kind of restraint and control, he still cannot directly utter that name. He cannot speak of it, cannot mention it. His name, appearance, preferences, clothing, everything he considers directly related to Muzan Kibatsuji, Kimimura can only recall in his mind, unable to utter a single word. It's as if some terrifying rule is binding him from the shadows. If he dares to utter a single word, he will immediately turn into a pool of pus and die a gruesome death. Kimimura could freely reveal information about demons, even their weakness to light, to Orochimaru, but he couldn't mention that name at all. This sent a chill down his spine. Had he truly regained his sanity and broken free from Muzan Kibatsuji's control? P.S. All donations have already been secretly priced. The author truly didn't expect to owe such a huge debt of 9 chapters upon release. This was definitely not in my planned script. I've already paid back 6 chapters, and I still owe 3. I'll continue paying back tomorrow. I'll take a break today. To prevent the debt from escalating and me eventually giving up, since a big shot in the group said they'd give me a surprise after I paid back, I quickly adjusted the bonus chapter rules. From now on, Alliance leaders will receive +2 chapters. Sect leaders will receive +1 chapter. 1,000 monthly tickets will receive +1 chapter. Silver might still +10 chapters. Anyway, there won't be one. No need to adjust. Chapter 130, the initial outline of a plan targeting Muzan Kibatsuji. Transforming humans into demons. Just a drop of blood. What a terrifying ability. It's like bacteria or viruses that can multiply infinitely. It only needs a single, initial source to potentially transform the entire world into a demon kingdom. Orochimaru felt a chill run down his spine. Fortunately, demons didn't seem to have such insane intentions. Perhaps there were some constraints or limitations, or perhaps it was a sense of racial superiority, or perhaps, as Kimimura said, most humans couldn't withstand the transformation by demon blood. Following this logic, could we deduce a hypothesis, that all demons originated from the very first one? Combining the information from Kimimura and Konoha, this first demon should be the one who escaped from the box of Elysium, Muzan Kibatsuji. However, none of this was what interested Orochimaru most. What truly intrigued him was a hidden thread behind this information. Where did the first demon come from? Are demons a naturally occurring species? Or are they artificially created mutations? If all demons in the world actually originate from the same source, then the so-called demon species are essentially the descendants of Muzan Kibatsuji himself. He was the first demon, and the only true demon. One demon creating and representing an entire species? Does this make logical sense? Orochimaru pondered deeply. He didn't even use ninjutsu to explore the existence of demons, but instead tried to transcend the framework of ninjutsu, using rigorous and meticulous logic to reconstruct the original state of everything. Orochimaru leaned towards the latter possibility. Demons are man-made, post-natal mutations. In other words, the first demon was transformed from the first self-transformed person, and that first person was Muzan Kibatsuji. Orochimaru felt he might be infinitely close to the truth. So, how did Muzan Kibatsuji transform from a human into a demon? Orochimaru wanted to uncover this mystery. This mystery led to immortality. Orochimaru saw this possibility in demons. If the weakness of being killed by sunlight could be eliminated, then demons were the template for immortality he had always dreamed of. Of course, it wasn't about becoming Muzan Kibatsuji's vassal, a puppet devoid of its own will and freedom, but rather, becoming a demon who could walk in the sunlight, just like the original demon. Orochimaru wrote down 2 new research topics in his experimental log, the principle and elimination method of sunlight-induced lethality and the initial transformation between humans and demons. His thoughts drifted a little far away. Orochimaru suppressed his excitement. Regardless, he had at least seen the direction of immortality in demons. To achieve these 2 goals, one was to overcome the difficulties through experimental research, the other was to obtain the answers directly from Muzan Kibatsuji. Orochimaru licked his dry lips. The depression and dejection from having his laboratory ransacked by demons seemed to have vanished. After all, the other party could never have predicted that Kimimura, whom he had transformed into a demon, would regain his humanity and rationality, thus revealing many secrets about demons to him. As for why Muzan Kibutsuji transformed Kimimaro, Orochimaru didn't suspect much. This was similar to how he had taken Kimimaro in Kirigakure, the only difference being that he had carefully nurtured him, while Orochimaru seemed to have chosen a more hands-off approach, waiting for Kimimaro to grow to a sufficient level before summoning him back. This suggested that the bondage and enslavement of demon blood was far stronger than he had imagined, making Kimimaro's ability to break free all the more remarkable and undoubtedly exceeding Muzan's expectations. On the other hand, it also demonstrated Muzan's cruelty and capriciousness. Transforming Kimimaro into a demon might have been a casual act, with Muzan completely unconcerned about the demon's fate or whether he could survive. Life and death were not within Muzan's considerations. Only by living and growing could Kimimaro possibly be noticed again in the future and summoned back. Death was even less important, merely a waste of a drop of blood. Arrogant, cruel, capricious, haughty. Orochimaru mentally labeled the complete stranger, Muzan Kibutsuji, with a string of negative tags. The remaining two questions are, why did the demons empty their laboratory? Do demons do scientific research? What are they researching? Orochimaru hadn't understood this question before. After all, demons doing scientific research sounded very incongruous. But now, he seemed to understand. Since the original demons were likely transformed from humans, and possessed the terrifying weakness of being unable to die from sunlight, the purpose of their research became clear. Muzan Kibutsuji certainly wasn't content to walk only in the night. No matter how terrifying or bizarre a creature, once it fears sunlight, there are countless ways to control and kill it. After all, the sun hangs eternally in the sky, its daily reach and duration so utterly despairing for demons. Orochimaru's eyes gleamed with a sinister light, his voice hoarse, and a sickly laugh escaped his throat. He was probably the only living person in the entire ninja world who knew of the demon's fatal weakness. A laboratory. In exchange for top-secret, exclusive intelligence, plus a Kimimaro transformed into a demon. A huge win. Orochimaru's mind raced. That demon named Kakashibo requested Muzan to transform Kimimaro, hoping Kimimaro could grow into a candidate for one of the 12 demon moons. The 12 demon moons, based on information gleaned from Fujiga, Orochimaru deduced that these were 12 demons who could get close to Muzan and be directly controlled by him. If he could help Kimimaro grow to that level, not just as a candidate for one of the 12 demon moons, but by directly replacing one of them, he could gradually gain Muzan's trust and favor. A rudimentary form of a massive plan targeting Muzan began to emerge in Orochimaru's mind. If he could achieve that, perhaps the realization of his new project wouldn't be far off. This plan was vast and complex, but if successful, the astonishing rewards. Orochimaru's breath became hot and rapid just thinking about it. This plan needs to be conceived and implemented gradually. Before that, Orochimaru needs to figure out another thing. Why was his remains brought to his laboratory by the demon? He examined the remains himself. There were signs of repair and alteration, clearly indicating that they had been used for something. But when they were returned, they were restored, which is very unsettling. What exactly did the demon do to his remains? What can a remains do? VIP Group 581,320,802, screenshot upon joining for 200 fan points. Chapter 131 The only one who glimpsed the truth. I know too much? Inside the glass nutrient tank filled with liquid, Orochimaru, for reasons unknown, examined the remains and then placed it back untouched. Gazing at the bloated, lifelike remains, he almost felt as if he were seeing his own corpse floating in the water. A chill ran down Orochimaru's spine. He couldn't imagine what a demon could do with his remains, but it was precisely this inability to imagine that made the chilling feeling all the more intense. Furthermore, how did this remains end up in the hands of a demon? While each remains looked roughly the same, because they were shed from one's own body, they appeared to Orochimaru like they carried a serial number. He quickly determined when this particular remains had been lost. It was the skin he shed after tasting the poisonous blood a month or so ago. Recalling this, Orochimaru connected certain key points. The two people he saw in the black market that day, weren't they wearing similar clothing to the person who stole the headless demon on the day of the transaction with Root? Afterwards, Orochimaru learned from Fujiga that the aloof and taciturn man who mysteriously disintegrated the sword into withered cherry blossoms was called Kachiki, one of the 13 figures in Hueco Mundo. Comparing this, the two people in the black market were with Kachiki. They were the other two of the 13 figures whose true forms were not revealed in the depiction of Hueco Mundo. However, they might already be dead. Otherwise, it's inexplicable why this remains ended up in the hands of a demon. Logically, it should have fallen into the hands of those two. The only explanation is that on that day, after he shed his skin and escaped, a demon followed him to the scene. It couldn't have been a coincidence or someone following him, it must have been someone who had tracked down the two from Hueco Mundo. Or perhaps, the two from Hueco Mundo who used the Byakugan to lure him in the black market that day were actually demons disguised and hiding among humans. As for why a demon would want to buy a Kugan? Orochimaru didn't want to delve too deeply into it for the time being. Perhaps, like his own remains, these things held some unknown and wondrous purpose in the hands of demons? Thus, the trap succeeded and failed. A demon did appear, but this demon wasn't Muzan Kibutsuji, the timing didn't match up, but most likely one of the 12 demon moons. For example, Kakashibo, whom Kimimaro encountered, a demon with 6 eyes on his face, each a Sharingan. It seemed reasonable that a demon with 6 eye sockets on its face would be lured by the Byakugan, leading to a fierce and deadly battle. Perhaps not one of the 12 demon moons appeared that day, or perhaps, besides the two who were in the open, there were also ambushes in the shadows in Hueco Mundo that day. Ultimately, the demons most likely won. So, when they finally cleaned up the battlefield, they also discovered and took away his own remains. Orochimaru deduced this in his mind, his face grim and ugly. From beginning to end, he had been caught in the crossfire of an undeserved disaster. One last piece of noteworthy information is that, according to Gurren, the demonic man who violated and modified her body possessed the ability to transform swords into terrifying monsters. Orochimaru was astonished upon first glimpse of this modification. Gurren's bodily functions were drastically enhanced, and her physical vitality increased terrifyingly. The mechanism is currently unknown. All that is known is that Gurren's internal organs were covered by a layer of strange bacteria. The unclear mechanism and potential risks will have to be left to future observation and experimentation, but this line of thinking greatly broadened Orochimaru's horizons, sparking many unprecedented inspirations in his mind. Perhaps this could lead to a qualitative leap in the Cursed Seal experiment. The sword that could transform into a centipede's body and an infant's face, and the demon sword in Kakashibo's hand covered in living eyes. While it sounded like a fantasy, Orochimaru believed it without hesitation, and in his mind, he drew a reasonable 3-part deduction. 1. The bizarre manipulation of swords is a unique signature ability of Hueco Mundo 2. Such a person has appeared in the ranks of demons. 3. Someone in Hueco Mundo was once transformed into a demon. Hueco Mundo and demons must have some unknown connection, and they are most likely hostile organizations. Orochimaru felt he knew too much. He was probably the person among humans who understood demons and Hueco Mundo most deeply and thoroughly. At the same time, a mega cure. The drizzling rain was incessant. In a dark cave, stone blocks were arranged in a circle, and on them stood robes with black backgrounds and red clouds. Some of these figures were real entities, while others were distorted, indistinct phantoms, their features obscured, only their outlines vaguely discernible. The illusionary body technique, one of the Rinnegan's abilities, allows pain to convert the chakra of Akatsuki members into thought waves, receiving and projecting them remotely, similar to a remote video conference. At this moment, a half-black, half-white face peeked out from a cracked pitcher plant on a mound of earth, reporting crucial information about the current state of the ninja world to the Akatsuki members. This is all the information I have so far. Although these clues and legends are intricately linked and captivating, and it's even possible that Konoha has completely fallen into this trap, I can confidently confirm that the existence of demons is a massive hoax, connected to a hidden organization called the Gotei 13. Black Zetsu spoke with absolute certainty, as if he had already uncovered the truth in secret. He pointed to some scrolls casually piled on the ground and said ominously, "These were originally left in the box of Elysium by the mastermind, intended to convey some false information to Konoha, but I intercepted them beforehand." I carefully examine each scroll. The content is terrifying and bizarre, as if telling a fragmented, incomplete ancient story. What story? The virtual projection, with its top knot and half-covered face, asked with curiosity. A fabricated ghost story, probably just expressing the terror and cruelty of demons, and vaguely revealing the existence of an organization that fights against demons. Black Zetsu replied. This organization should be the Gotei 13, probably using this to pave the way for their future emergence, establishing an ancient and righteous historical status. I've completely seen through it. Oh. It was still the guy with the top knot speaking. his tone revealing no disappointment. Are you sure it's fake? Aren't you just being too subjective and making a wrong judgment? It sounds quite real to me. Black Zetsu's brow furrowed, ignoring Dieter's nonsense, and continued to pull out a thin membrane from his hand. It looked like human skin peeled off a person, specially processed and preserved, with 2 lines of text printed on it in different fonts. You could say that he had intercepted all the valuable clues in the box of Elysium. At this moment, Black Zetsu's heart remained as strong and certain as ever that no one in the entire ninja world knew the truth of history better than him. There will be an extra chapter tonight. Chapter 132. The provocation of the 13 Gotei. 13 even gods have to compete for their positions? This human skin could also be considered a trophy Black Zetsu retrieved. These past few days, with nothing else to do, he repeatedly pondered the contextual meaning behind the words, trying to understand the deeper implications these fabricated words truly intended to convey. The first sentence, my era will not end here. I will remember this humiliation. One day I will return. I will no longer grovel and beg for shelter. I will forge a world that grovels at my feet. Kibutsuji Musen. Black Zetsu recited the first sentence with a full, emotional voice, then said in a sinister tone, this is the first sentence, signed Kibutsuji Musen. At first glance, it seems terrifying, but upon closer examination, it's nothing more than a revenger's oath, a self-comforting and impotent rage of a defeated dog. The Akatsuki members remained silent, unsure whether they understood or simply lacked reading comprehension skills. This sentence easily implies a clue. To whom did the ghost once grovel, begging for shelter? Black Zetsu sneered. The answer lies in the second sentence. The second sentence, no one was born standing in the heavens, neither you nor I, not even the gods. But the vacancy of the throne of heaven is about to end. From now on, I will stand at the top. This sentence is unsigned, but it is filled with the judgment of a victor. The person who wrote this is proclaiming himself a god. No. Black Zetsu subconsciously glanced at the pair of Rinnegan standing at the top center, and said slowly and deliberately, it should be said that he even proclaims himself above the gods. Black Zetsu is very good at manipulating people's minds. He especially understands Pain's psychological activities. If you were just telling ghost stories, Pain probably wouldn't be interested. But adding this sentence changes everything. 2 people who both claim to be on par with the gods, and who happen to control 2 terrifying organizations hidden beneath the surface, are attempting to manipulate the future of the world. I strongly suspect that the person who wrote this sentence is the one who imprisoned Musen Kibutsuji in the box of Elysium. To be precise, that's how it is in his fabricated story. And this unsigned person should be the real mastermind behind the 13 Gotei. 13. Black Zetsu had been refining these words in his mind for a long time. As he spoke, he stared at the ever-indifferent Rinnegan. He didn't believe that Nagato behind him could remain calm and composed after hearing these words. The atmosphere of industry competition was palpable. Even gods had to compete for their positions. This second sentence could even be seen as a provocation sent to the entire industry, translating to, only one seat can be occupied at the top of the throne. Whether you're a puppet on stage or the mastermind behind the scenes, whether you're playing a human, a demon, or a god, your time is running out. Pain turned his neck, his gaze indifferently sweeping over Black Zetsu, a dangerous glint flashing in his densely packed Rinnegan eyes. The air in the cave seemed to grow oppressive and stifling. Black Zetsu, what's your suggestion? Pain reached out, pulling the human skin with the words printed on it back into his palm, then casually crushing it into powder and scattering it into the air. How dare these ignorant and arrogant mortals defy a god? Pain felt a surge of interest in the existence of the Gotei. 13. He wanted to know if the person who wrote these words would still dare to speak so arrogantly when facing his own godlike eyes in the future. Eliminate the demons, eliminate this organization, and let the world return to its established path as soon as possible, so as not to interfere with or hinder the Akatsuki's future plans. Black Zetsu said. Toby, who had been listening in, wearing a spiral-patterned mask, interjected at the opportune moment, suggesting, the Akatsuki's next recruitment could use the hunting of demons and members of the Gotei. 13 as a qualification test for joining the organization. What are your thoughts? Pain surveyed the organization members. It's rare to see such an interesting organization. Are we really going to launch a targeted hunt? Perhaps letting them continue might bring us more surprises? Dieter complained somewhat discontentedly. The ghost story he told was quite artistic. He liked organizations with this kind of romantic, artistic flair and didn't want them to disappear. He'd even considered betraying them. Black Zetsu's forward veins bulged. Fortunately, the other members were used to Dieter's eccentricities and no one paid him any serious attention. I have no objections. If things are handled properly in secret, we might even be able to collect bounties on their heads from various ninja villages. A greedy, hoarse voice came from a distorted virtual projection. Regardless of the truth of the ghost story, I'm really interested in the bodies of demons. If we could create puppets. A sinister, hoarse laugh came from a figure huddled in a black robe on a stone pillar. Then it's decided, Pain, concluded, then continued, did Orochimaru miss the meeting again? I informed him. Black Zetsu replied, Orochimaru always claims his experiments are at a crucial stage, skipping meetings and refusing missions assigned by the organization. Keeping that dead snake in the organization is just a waste of space. This recruitment of new members is a perfect opportunity to replace him and get rid of him. The figure shrouded in black robes raised a hideous face, his eyes filled with murderous intent. The feud between Sasori and Orochimaru, the former wanting to turn the latter into a puppet, the latter wanting to dissect and study the former, was practically an open secret within the organization. Do you have any recommendations for new members? Pain moved on to the next topic. A brief silence followed. Toby slowly uttered a name. Itachi Uchiha, a Konoha S-rank rogue ninja, personally slaughtered his entire clan. I've had contact with him. He's very interested in the Akatsuki's principles and goals. Black Zetsu also slowly uttered a name. Kisame Hoshigaki, one of the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, known as the human-tailed beast, is extremely powerful. I can find a way to recruit him into the Akatsuki. Hidden, who calls himself a follower of the Jashin, is someone I met during the last mission. I recommend him to join the Akatsuki, Kakuzu said. Any other candidates? Pain silently noted down these names, remaining non-committal. The magician, Hisoka. Suddenly, 3 voices uttered the same name in unison. The 3 speakers were Black Zetsu, Toby, and Sasori of the Red Sand. Black Zetsu and Toby exchanged a subtle glance, not understanding why Sasori would recommend Hisoka, who had only uttered a name and then remained silent. Pain didn't ask any further questions. He didn't care about the members' individual thoughts. To him, no one could escape his control under the influence of these 2 Rinnegan. Where are the demon and the 13 Gotei 13? Pain asked indifferently. This was the last question of the meeting. This question concerned how to conduct the test for the new members. Black Zetsu's forehead broke out in a cold sweat. He had also been pondering this question recently, but strangely, since their parting in Konoha, the 13 Gotei 13 and the demon had both vanished without a trace, as if they had never existed. He couldn't find a single clue. The O chapters have all been paid back. Chapter 133 Black Zetsu has caught the hidden tail of the Gotei 13. What's the most important thing for a mastermind? Intelligence. Acting skills. Intelligence. In terms of intelligence and acting skills, Black Zetsu was confident he was superior to anyone, even the mastermind behind the Gotei 13. But in terms of intelligence, Black Zetsu suffered a crushing defeat this time. You're not telling me you don't know the whereabouts of the demons and the Gotei 13, are you? Pain's voice gradually turned cold. So your suggestion to Toby was a joke. Not knowing where the enemy is. What kind of hunting test are you conducting? An awkward silence hung in the air. Black Zetsu's face flushed slightly. He felt that if he didn't give an explanation soon, he would lose his job as the organization's intelligence specialist. This organization is extremely adept at concealing their tracks. They occasionally surface but quickly disappear again. Currently, we still know very little about them, making it difficult to grasp and predict their whereabouts. However, it doesn't matter, I've already found a clue. Black Zetsu answered very seriously and confidently. Give me a little more time, and I'll catch them when they show their true colors. I promise I won't delay the organization's recruitment test. Pain's face was indifferent, his pair of terrifying Rinnegan seemed to pierce through Black Zetsu's heart. Then, he coldly snorted and disappeared from the spot. Illusionary body technique dispelled. One after another, the virtual projections silently disappeared from the spot. Haha, let me know in advance if you find that organization, I'm going. Dieter's figure lingered as the last one disappeared, his half-voiced words still echoing in the cave. Black Zetsu ground his sharp teeth. Abi placed his hand on Black Zetsu's shoulder, the single Sharingan beneath his spiral mask swirling eerily, a deep suspicion in his eyes. You blushed just now. Tell me the truth, are you unable to find any trace of them? Give me a little more time, I have a lead. Black Zetsu didn't believe Abi could see him blush, and he had already mobilized all his white Zetsu to work around the clock. Finding a hidden organization was nothing, even a thorough search of the entire ninja world was within reach. You told me the same thing last time, and the time before that. Afei sighed deeply. Remembering that Black Zetsu was, after all, the embodiment of Madara Uchiha's will, he still had to respect his ancestors' reputation. Tell me what the clues are, and I'll help you find them. Black Zetsu let out a long breath, meeting Afei's concerned and caring gaze, and explained with immense frustration, I really did go through the entire intelligence of the Gotei 13 from the beginning, and found 2 clues that are most likely to lead to their capture. Afei listened attentively, sensing that Black Zetsu wasn't exaggerating. The first clue, it's Kirigakure, the place where they first appeared. The Gotei 13 created hollow-feed monsters there and touted themselves as an ancient organization of justice. This event seemed to cause a big stir, but due to the policies of the Village of Blood and Mist, its actual impact was very limited, far less than the commotion they caused in Konoha later. Black Zetsu held up one index finger, analyzing clearly. Moreover, the Gotei 13 deliberately revealed their secrets in the Village of Blood and Mist, but in Konoha, they didn't show up at all, instead carefully designing and fabricating a ghost story. There's a clear difference between these two events. Something's not right. Would a mastermind who fabricates myths and legends and creates species out of thin air be satisfied with just leaving behind a concept of hollow feed in Kirigakure? Compared to the scale of the Konoha ghost story, the hollow feed event was clearly more bark than bite, which doesn't fit the style of that mastermind. Black Zetsu, judging others by his own standards, knew that as masterminds, they easily shared a common understanding. Analyzing the subtle foreshadowing and intricate plotting in the ghost story incident, he chillingly concluded, the Kirigakure incident may never be over. It's a deliberate loophole, waiting for the right moment to explode. Toby's face was stiff and blank beneath his mask. Frankly, his mind was a little slow, but it sounded quite reasonable. You mean, Toby pondered, can we find the Gotei 13 in Kirigakure? Are they hiding there? No. Black Zetsu knew Toby wouldn't grasp the intricacies. This was the brainwaves of a mastermind. What I mean is, the Kirigakure incident definitely has a sequel. As long as we keep a close eye on it, we'll definitely find traces of the Gotei 13 again. You're right, Toby nodded repeatedly, deciding to pretend to understand first, and then analyze the logic more carefully when no one was around. Black Zetsu didn't expose Toby. He held up his second finger. The second clue points to Kusagakure, and it's still about the legend of the Box of Elysium. The most important part of the ghost story is the modification of the Box of Elysium. This is the most crucial point of the whole thing, and it's what made the legend a reality, because, in full view of everyone, the demon did indeed walk out of the Box of Elysium. Black Zetsu pondered this, feeling there was a big problem. He decided to set aside how the Gotei 13 actually created the demon, as he couldn't find the answer at this stage. Black Zetsu's main concern now was when and how the Gotei 13 put the demon into the Box of Elysium. Not only that, they also put in many, hollowed-out, monsters, and they constructed corresponding structures inside the Box of Elysium, including the empty houses and the paintings inside. This must have been a massive and time-consuming project. In short, how could the Gotei 13 have concealed this modification from Kusagakure and done it right under their noses? Unless. Black Zetsu's gaze burned as he looked at Toby. Unless, the Grass Ninja Village itself was involved in this deception. Toby finally understood and blurted out, Hisoka? It might not be Hisoka, but someone in the Grass Ninja Village must know the inside story. At the very least, someone inside helped the Gotei 13 cover it up. Black Zetsu regained Toby's trust with his intelligence. There was another possibility he didn't mention, because Black Zetsu had now uncovered the whole story. He knew that the Box of Elysium hadn't always stayed in the Grass Ninja Village, but had been kidnapped by Konoha's root for a period of time. It's possible the Box of Elysium was modified during its transfer to Root, but that's highly unlikely. It would require proof that Root betrayed Konoha, or even Danzo. Black Zetsu didn't believe the Gotei 13 were capable of doing that. Therefore, the Grass Ninja Village must be seriously suspicious. Bonus chapter for monthly votes completed. Chapter 134 The Surrounded Grass Village. Kakashi escapes through the snake's belly? What should we do? Afei asked. It's not good if the Gotei 13 finds out about this hard-won clue and cuts it off. Let's not alert them for now. I've already dispatched a large number of white Zetsu to surround Kusagakure from underground. Black Zetsu let out a sinister laugh. Black Zetsu was gradually forming a mental outline of the Gotei 13's style. Whenever this organization appeared, it was to create a big event, a grand spectacle, stirring up trouble in the public eye, as if it wanted the whole world to dance around it. But when the organization went into hiding, it was to be plotting a grand conspiracy, a grand lie, disappearing silently behind the scenes, seemingly trying to make the whole world unable to find their trace. One before, one after, like two sides of the sky, when in motion, it stirs up thunder and storms, changing the color of the sky and earth. When still, it is a clear blue and tranquil, silently blending into the world. It is difficult for anyone to connect these two things as one. But Black Zetsu knew that the Gotei 13 wanted more than just stirring up trouble. Their fabrication of myths and legends, their creation of new species, they were attempting to completely overturn the heavens. They had to be dragged out and eliminated. Black Zetsu's eyes revealed the wisdom of someone who had already seen through everything. He had caught the Gotei 13 inadvertently revealing their weakness. Now, all he had to do was patiently wait, following the clues to drag them out of their hiding place and expose them to the light of day. When it came to hiding, what creature in the ninja world could rival a white Zetsu? Black Zetsu had absolute confidence in the thousands of white Zetsu under his command. The grass village was fraught with problems. A stark white eyeball was embedded in a mirror, the mirror covered in a thick layer of fungus, reflecting the entire village's surface and underground with crystal clarity. On every street and every wall in every corner, moss-like plants seemed to have sprouted due to the humid air, scattered in patches across Kusagakure, even stubbornly burrowing into the ground. These were the fungal carpet surveillance devices created by Mayuri Kuratsuchi. The mirror embedded with his Byakugan was rented to Moriakaji, the payment being the bald, pale corpses on the ground. At this moment, white mayfly-like creatures silently swam in the dark earth, and twisted, grotesque pitcher plants quietly emerged from the ground under the cover of night. The pitcher plants opened eerily, revealing a bald head and body, a piece of moss clinging to the soil as it broke through the soil and fell onto the scalp. Investigating the anomalies in Kusagakure. White Zetsu 303 had been investigating Kusagakure for many days, and in his view, the biggest anomaly in the village was, the pitcher plants in the village were unusually abundant this year. In previous years, a small, impoverished ninja village like Kusagakure, only able to reminisce about its past glories, would never have so many pitcher plants growing there. Had Black Zetsu lost his mind, sending so many white Zetsu to infiltrate the underground of Kusagakure? It was utterly outrageous. The once spacious underground area, perfect for roaming, was now crammed with pale shadows, and what's worse, they all looked almost identical. White Zetsu 303 wiped the moss off his head and looked up to see another pitcher plant sprouting from the base of a wall in the distance. A wriggling white body crawled out, revealing a bald, familiar head. As if looking in a mirror, the two white Zetsu waved to each other. Then, a shoe sole fell from the sky, crushing the bald head like tofu, sending it exploding into a spray of blood and flesh. White Zetsu 303 stiffly turned his neck and saw a sharp scythe wrapped around it. Behind the scythe were terrifying tendons, and behind those tendons was a taut, stringy shoulder. On the shoulder, a head was baring its teeth and spitting out a cold, chilling laugh. I didn't sense any living person approaching? White Zetsu 303 was puzzled. He was certain he hadn't sensed any living person nearby before daring to poke his head out from underground. Sizzle. Blood rose in a line along his neck, and the head rolled and fell to the ground. Hu Tengwu picked up the head and severed corpse and said coldly to the bloodied and mangled Gui Xiangnan, "Don't make it so dirty. It'll be a hassle to clean up." "What does it matter? Just call number 1 to clean it up." Gui Xiangnan picked up the mangled corpse and precisely plunged his hand into the corpse's chest. The sound of grinding teeth could be heard from inside. Satoru Hanafuro suppressed his urge to eat, stitched the decapitated corpse back together, and casually dragged it on the ground. This body, along with a dozen or so white Zetsu corpses piled up in the morgue, would be divided in two. Half would be sent back to the laboratory in Hazuki Castle to pay Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi's rent payment. The other half would be transported to Konoha as a gift from Kusagakure. A pile of nearly identical, Almost cloned corpses suddenly placed before the Hokage would surely be a shock. Then, Kusagakure's highest leader, Moriakaji, could anxiously report on the village's current situation, including the threat from a terrorist organization, and logically request Konoha to send a military force to protect Kusagakure. Simultaneously, it would deepen the trust and friendship between the two villages, laying a solid foundation for future cooperation. Perfect. Outside, the sun shone brightly, but inside the snake's belly was sticky and viscous, a chilling, foul stench emanating from it. Kakashi awoke, used a kunai to slit open the snake's abdomen from the inside, and scrambled out. Blood and bile mixed with mucus smeared his entire body, and Kakashi gagged several times, staring wretchedly at the disemboweled giant python's corpse. It had been dead for a while. Not killed by internal disembowelment. Kakashi looked suspiciously to his side, and sure enough, not far away lay another python corpse, its abdomen ripped open with a huge gash, the internal mucous membranes dried out by the sun. It's Fujigaya. Kakashi conjured up a scene in his mind. About half a day ago, Fujigaya had woken up from the snake's belly before him, also splitting open the snake's belly to crawl out, then nailing the giant python that had carried him to the ground, and then leaving him to continue sleeping inside the python's carcass. Isn't he worried about suffocating in the dead snake's corpse? Kakashi's mask reeked of bitterness, his face turning ashen. This was something a fellow villager would do. Fujigaya was inhuman. Kakashi was furious. He could guess Fujigaya's intention. To return to Konoha first and report and explain the mission to the Hokage. Yo, isn't this Kakashi? Looks like you've gotten lost on the road of life again? A slightly flippant, teasing voice came from behind. A man wearing a brown robe and red vest, wooden clogs, and a headband with a character oil on his head, with messy white hair, looked travel-worn, a rough smile playing on his lips. Kakashi whirled around to face the man behind him, his brow instantly relaxing. Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, was finally returning to the village. Want a new copy of Makeout Paradise? It can help you find your way when you're lost. Oh ha. Jiraiya formed hand seals, spat out water to wash away the grime from Kakashi, and casually shoved her well-signed, thick book into the latter's arms. Kakashi, don't look so gloomy. Crawling out of a snake's belly is an interesting part of life. Jiraiya laughed heartily, his unrestrained laughter dispelling all the gloom in the air. Chapter 135 Jiraiya the Hero, Sharingan Mutated? Following Orochimaru's defection and Tsunade's departure due to hemophobia, the once proud and renowned legendary Sannin of Konoha were effectively extinct, leaving only Jiraiya to continue his tireless efforts for the village. As the least talented of the former Sannin, Jiraiya probably never imagined that he would end up alone. In his youth, he was the worst among the legendary Sannin, constantly striving to catch up with his companions and not let himself be left behind. As an adult, he was the only remaining member of the legendary Sannin, still relentlessly pursuing their footsteps, hoping one day to bring them all back to his side in the village. If life is a road, some people always get lost, some stray onto the wrong path, some stop in fear, and some wander aimlessly, unable to find their way forward. But Jiraiya was different. His entire life was a journey, a road filled with sorrow, thorns, and blood. He may have hesitated, he may have felt fear and confusion, but ultimately, he still shouldered his pack and steadfastly moved forward, tirelessly traveling for his companions and for the village. Behind his seemingly rugged and unrestrained smile, no one knows how many tears and blood he silently swallowed. He couldn't articulate profound truths, couldn't write a masterpiece like Heroes and Seireitei's The Will of Fire, nor could he speak with the philosophical and seductive power of Orochimaru. Jiraiya could only publish the vulgar bestseller Makeout Paradise, but perhaps he was the one who truly dedicated his life to upholding the will of fire. And the story he told with his life is called The Tale of the Heroes. And now, this book is still on its way, unfinished. Who knows what unprecedented scenery he will encounter on this journey, and whether the ending will be different. The future is unknown, but for now, The Tale of the Heroes has clearly been forced into the chapter of Ghost Stories. As soon as I received the encrypted intelligence from Seireitei-sensei, I rushed back to the village. Is everything in that intelligence true? Do demons exist in this world? Jiraiya's boisterous smile faded, his eyes revealing a hint of solemnity and gloom. Danzo is dead? The Uchiha clan is reduced to a single survivor? Konoha suffered heavy casualties? Kakashi, tell me, is all of this true? Jiraiya wasn't afraid of demons, but he refused to accept the casualty figures in that intelligence report. Even though he didn't like some of the people on the list, most were familiar faces. He didn't want to return to the village to find only cold memorial tablets, or even worse, some names not even inscribed on those tablets. Demons are real. Kakashi stammered. The events of that night were still shrouded in many mysteries and enigmas, but he dared not, and could not, investigate them. He could only answer Jiraiya, they are indeed all dead. Dead. That was the answer. Jiraiya fell silent. He understood the implication in Kakashi's words. Perhaps it was all true, perhaps some of the details were false, but what could he do? This was perhaps the fate that ninjas had to bear. Jiraiya sighed repeatedly. Yes, the dead could not be brought back to life, and he was powerless to change anything. No, he should say there were too many things he wanted to change, but ultimately he was powerless too. Jiraiya patted his head, looked up at the blazing sun, then glanced at the python carcass on the ground before asking suspiciously, "These two snakes, Kakashi. You didn't run into Orochimaru, did you?" Kakashi was impressed by Jiraiya's keen intuition. He had nothing to hide and told Jiraiya everything about the failed mission. So, Orochimaru also knows about the existence of demons, and he's even touched one himself. He must be very happy that demons exist in the world. Jiraiya didn't know whether he should be happy for Orochimaru, but from Kakashi's words, he could sense the unease in Kakashi's heart. The eerie and cruel demons, whose methods of killing were unknown, and the terrifying and domineering sudden appearance of those defined as Hueco Mundo. It seemed that in a short period of time, the entire ninja world had suddenly become unfamiliar and incomprehensible. The more one knew, the more uneasy one felt. Let's go back to the village. Jiraiya patted Kakashi's shoulder and laughed loudly. As long as the sky doesn't fall, everything will be alright. Jiraiya laughed, but only he knew the heavy gloom hidden in his heart. However, he decided that it was necessary to go to Mount Myaboku. If demons and Hueco Mundo existed in this world, and there were unknown horrors unknown to humans, perhaps they could obtain some truths hidden in history from the Toad Sage. Kakashi expressionlessly adjusted his headband. He didn't tell Jiraiya that while unconscious in the snake's belly, he seemed to feel an evil power emerging and gathering in his left pupil. When he awoke, it seemed that some strange pattern had formed in his pupil. What's even stranger is that Kakashi himself couldn't distinguish which fainting episode occurred during his unconsciousness. He'd been frequently fainting these past 2 days, his consciousness somewhat hazy, unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. In one particular fainting episode, he seemed to see a strange, desolate space in his mind, and within that space stood a person wearing a pale white mask with spiral patterns, revealing only a single, eerie, scarlet Sharingan eye. This person wore a black robe with red clouds, and the figure hidden beneath the robe had an inexplicably familiar feel, but it wasn't Itachi Uchiha. Who could it be? Wasn't the Uchiha clan wiped out, leaving only a young orphan? Kakashi was extremely puzzled. Then, the person in that space seemed to sense something, their eyes flashing with surprise and anger, before the image in his mind was abruptly cut off and vanished. A dream? An illusion? Kakashi was suspicious. He couldn't explain it, only knowing that the pupil beneath his headband must have undergone some kind of mutation he didn't understand, and that sinister, evil feeling was real. So, was the image he saw also real? He'd seen the black robe and red clouds in the painting before, or Orochimaru wore the same style when he met with Root. The figure felt strangely familiar. Kakashi racked his brains, and it connected with someone already dead, Uchiha Obito. A long dead man, and the true owner of his left eye. Kakashi was shocked by his own thought. He immediately dismissed a far-fetched idea, but, for some reason, the more he recalled the figure, the more similar it seemed. He shouldn't have connected it to a dead person. But now, the world had changed, even demons existed. What was impossible? Kakashi had no definitive answer, but almost instinctively, he decided to conceal the matter, and also the mutation of his left eye. P.S. I really like Jiraiya. I admire his unwavering spirit. Taking advantage of Jiraiya's appearance. I wish all the students taking the college entrance exam tomorrow the best of luck in achieving their desired results. But no matter your final exam results, may you, like Jiraiya, overcome all obstacles and move forward on your future path. I also hope that other readers, especially those who are older, can also write their own satisfying life story on this one-way journey of life. The opening paragraph was written for Jiraiya, but also for every reader of this book. I hope each of you can be a hero in your own life. May you all always move forward on the road of life, never retreating. I'm writing this blessing here so that those using certain platforms won't miss it. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 The Hidden Mist Village is really well hidden. In the smoke-filled office, Hirozen Seireitei, having lost 10 years of his youth, smoked even more heavily, his lungs having proven their resilience. The headless ghost is gone? Hirozen's brow furrowed. People from Hueco Mundo have appeared. Is it Kachiki, the one whose name we only know halfway through? Yes. Fujige replied, bowing his head. Our deal with Orochimaru was intercepted midway. 2 people from Hueco Mundo appeared. Orochimaru was scared off by Kachiki's single strike, and the rest of us were no match. In the end, only Kakashi and I survived. Where's Kakashi? Hirozen asked. Kakashi is still behind. I rushed back to report to the Hokage, Fujige answered truthfully. Hirozen took a few deep drags on his cigarette, not doubting Fujige's words. After all, Kakashi's lazy nature, his frequent getting lost and lateness, was well known throughout Konoha. Tell me the whole process in detail, don't miss a single step. Hirozen Seireitei was a little flustered. The demon saga hadn't subsided, and now someone had suddenly appeared in Hueco Mundo. It was truly one wave after another. Hueco Mundo had appeared? Was it really Hueco Mundo? Could it be that the assessment of Hueco Mundo was based on Nara Shikaku's deduction of the painting at the meeting? Hirozen Seireitei had always harbored a different opinion, but he hadn't revealed it. He really hadn't expected this person from Hueco Mundo to appear so quickly. Caught off guard, for now, he'd just treated as Hueco Mundo for the time being. The constant stream of changes left Hirozen Seireitei exhausted. In just a few days, he felt increasingly lost in this ninja world. Fujige earnestly and without embellishment described everything that had happened that day to Hirozen Seireitei. When describing how the Hueco Mundo referred to the headless demons as domesticated vicious dogs, and their condescending and disdainful attitude towards ninjas, Hirozen Seireitei seemed thoughtful. It wasn't disdain for ninjas, but rather a condescending sense of superiority towards humans, a tone reminiscent of Muzan Kibutsuji. This suggested that they, like demons, were likely non-humans in human form. Then, when Fujige mentioned the phrase imprisoned in the Palace of Penitence for 400 years, Hirozen Seireitei's eyebrows twitched sharply. He had heard the words Palace of Penitence from Muzan Kibutsuji. Muzan's exact words to him were, I fear your soul will be imprisoned in the Palace of Penitence after death, unable to be reborn for countless lifetimes. Normally, Hirozen Seireitei wouldn't have paid much attention to the meaning of those words, but now he had no choice but to ponder their malicious intent in the quiet of the night. Fujige's final description focused on the 2 swords. One could transform into a sprawling, enormous, and seemingly alive skeletal snake, radiating a terrifying aura. The other could wither into a shower of cherry blossoms, beautiful yet harboring a deadly and insidious killing intent, instantly dissolving Orochimaru's summoned Manda into ashes, forcing Orochimaru to flee. 2 bizarre and terrifying swords. Hirozen Seireitei's expression turned grave. Just like some of the abilities Muzan Kibutsuji had displayed, these were abilities they had never heard of or imagined before, inconceivable powers. Clearly, whether it was demon or Hueco Mundo, the abilities they used were completely outside the scope of ninjutsu. Hirozen Seireitei pondered for a long time. After all, he hadn't been there in person and couldn't make the most direct judgment, so he could only rely as much as possible on Fujige's intuition. Do you think their strange abilities are inherent, with the swords merely a medium, or are those 2 swords the key to their powers? Hirozen Seireitei asked pointedly. Perhaps both. Fujige feigned hesitation before giving a prepared answer. Hirozen didn't believe Fujige could give a precise answer, he was simply recalling the sword inserted in the box of Elysium when it opened. Perhaps that sword held some answers? And that sword was now in Hisoka's hands. A sharp killing intent flashed in Hirozen's eyes as he stared at Fujige and asked, anything else? Has the deal between Rude and Orochimaru completely failed? Not completely. Fujige replied in a deep voice, I took it upon myself to agree to Orochimaru's request to reschedule a time and place to deliver a mindless demon under the sealing team's control to Orochimaru, with the conditions remaining the same as previously agreed. Of the demons captured in Konoha that night, the most valuable was naturally the headless monster, followed by the mindless hollows. Of course, at this stage, in Konoha's eyes, they were all treated equally as demons. Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't punish Fujigaya for his unauthorized decision. As the successor of Root, this kind of discretionary power had to be granted. Also, Orochimaru gave me some very important information. Fujigaya took 2 steps forward and lowered his voice. The Hidden Mist Village seems to be developing a forbidden research method called holification, and the products created by this holification seem to have some similarities to demons. Orochimaru was completely unaware. The news was too shocking. Hiruzen Sarutobi suddenly stood up, pacing back and forth in the room, his heart filled with turmoil. The Hidden Mist Village had created a product similar to demons? Did this mean that the Hidden Mist Village had also come into contact with demons, and earlier than Konoha, which was why they were conducting related research? When did that begin? Could it have started with a blockade of the Blood Mist Village, and the Hidden Mist Village was using this to cover their tracks? A series of questions surfaced in Hiruzen Sarutobi's mind, various terrifying conspiracy theories weaving together. He was shocked. The Hidden Mist Village did a good job keeping it a secret. They've even produced research results. They're truly insidious. How could the Hidden Mist Village keep such crucial information about demons from the entire ninja world for so long? If the Hidden Mist Village hadn't kept it a secret, how could Konoha have opened the box of paradise without any suspicion and released Muzan Kibutsuji? The Hidden Mist Village has harmed the entire ninja world. Hiruzen Sarutobi gritted his teeth in anger. If Orochimaru's information was confirmed to be true, then the Hidden Mist Village would be the sinners of the ninja world. Confirm the authenticity of this information as soon as possible, and find a way to infiltrate the Blood Mist Village, find all possible intelligence and evidence related to demons, and find out the true situation of the Hidden Mist Village. Hiruzen Sarutobi coldly issued the order. Fujigaya nodded repeatedly, taking on this thorny and arduous task for Root. Afterwards, to cope with the increasingly chaotic situation in the ninja world, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Fujigaya carefully discussed the plan to expand Root's talent pool. Hiruzen indicated that he would recruit elite individuals from various clans within the village to supplement Root, which was tantamount to indirectly expanding Root's power, a habitual move by Hiruzen Sarutobi to infiltrate Root. Hiruzen wasn't worried that Fujigaya would slip out of his control. Not every Root leader was like Shimura Danzo. This was merely an instinctive precaution, a trait he developed as a politically astute individual. Fujigaya was secretly pleased, but outwardly agreed to accept the offer without batting an eye. Finally, Fujigaya casually mentioned to Hiruzen that he suspected Orochimaru might have joined a clandestine organization, based on the custom-made appearance of Orochimaru's clothing when meeting with Root members. This suspicion was so absurd that Hiruzen didn't take it seriously, merely receiving a whispered suggestion. Chapter 137 Fate is taking a turn. Kakashi and Jiraiya returned to the village together. They went to the Hokage's office for their report. Kakashi left quickly. Hiruzen Sarutobi and Kakashi shared a tacit understanding, neither mentioned the reason for their lateness. Adults see through things but don't say anything, they had to save face for each other. At least, Hiruzen Sarutobi felt he was a caring and tolerant leader, and Kakashi indeed maintained his dignity, unwilling to mention that he had spent most of his mission inside the snake's belly. Leaving the Hokage building, walking on the newly paved streets, the smooth, clean roads no longer bore the blood-soaked carpet of that night. Only the streets were much less crowded, the air filled with a desolate and lonely atmosphere. Extending into the deepest part of the road, the residential area marked with a fam symbol was deathly silent, like an empty ghost town. As if by some strange twist of fate, Kakashi wandered into the Uchiha clan's territory. Large sections of the houses had been re-enclosed, reclaimed by Konoha and redeveloped. Some of the clan's insignia, bearing the fam-shaped crest, had been painted over and temporarily covered with earthen walls. Inside, the figures of Root members could be faintly seen moving about. So it's been assigned to Root? The village is planning a major expansion of Root. Kakashi turned his head expressionlessly to a small area across the street, preserved separately as the legacy of the Uchiha orphan. Kakashi walked towards it and, sure enough, saw a small figure standing in the shadows, his gaze filled with hatred yet utterly powerless as he stared at the suddenly erected high wall and fence opposite him. A lonely figure, A gloomy aura, hatred and helplessness. This brat will probably be neighbors with Root from now on. How pitiful. Kakashi felt sorry for Uchiha Sasuke. He saw in those eyes boundless hatred, hatred for Konoha, hatred for the world, even hatred for himself. Yes, Sasuke Uchiha's eyes were filled with hatred. To him, with all his clansmen dead, the world had abandoned him alone. Itachi Uchiha was an executioner, and Konoha was a ruthless bandit. Suddenly, the entire world seemed to shroud him only in endless malice. Anger simmered in his chest, his lungs exhaled burning hatred. He wanted to burn the entire world, burning himself to ashes as well. However, he lacked the power. Where can I find the power of revenge? Who can help me destroy this hateful world? Sasuke Uchiha pondered this question day and night, even in his dreams. And when he awoke that day, looking at the devastated Konoha, at the blood-soaked, muddy carpet of blood, he felt a wave of nausea and vomiting, but the breath that followed brought a strange sense of relief. Demon. Sasuke Uchiha learned the name of a new species. Cruel, violent, terrifying, and eerie. This is a terrifying species that sees humans as food. Uchiha Sasuke silently memorized this word, a dangerous thought arising in his mind. If only the demons could come back to Konoha and kill everyone, if only I could be as powerful as the demons, or even become a demon myself. True to his Uchiha lineage, his mind was always filled with insane and dangerous thoughts unimaginable to ordinary people. Kakashi, of course, was unaware of Sasuke's thoughts. He sighed deeply, turned, and disappeared. He went to the memorial grave site. Standing before Nahararin's grave, looking at the new bouquet of yellow flowers on the altar, Kakashi suddenly fell into deep thought. Now that he thought about it, every time he came, there was a bouquet of yellow flowers at this gravesite, rain or shine, as if someone lived there permanently. Kakashi's fingertips rubbed his headband, the nails scraping as he pondered that inconceivable possibility. Logically speaking, it was impossible. But this world can no longer be viewed with the old, conventional perspective. Could it be you, Obito? Kakashi murmured to himself, his low whisper carried away by the wind. In the distance, in a hidden shadow, a spiral-patterned mask stared wide-eyed. Toby was struck dumb, his face beneath the mask stiffening in astonishment. He couldn't understand what was wrong with Kakashi's mind, why he would suddenly connect it to a dead person. Outrageous. Kakashi shook his head vigorously, realizing his own thoughts were absurd. He must have seen something else entirely, just a hallucination, and he was simply overthinking things. Uchiha Obito had died right before his eyes, half his body smashed to pieces. He wasn't a ghost. How could he possibly be alive? Kakashi temporarily suppressed this thought of surprise and doubt. However, the person I saw in my mind definitely has a Sharingan, and the clothes he was wearing are the same as the ones Orochimaru wore when he met with Root. Orochimaru should know who that person is. Kakashi thought to himself, deciding to find another opportunity to ask Orochimaru about this later. Kakashi was unaware that there was another Sharingan behind him, just like him, also caught in a complex mental storm. Where did I go wrong? Have I been coming to the graveyard too often? Wait, why did Kakashi suddenly connect this to the dead? What happened to him that I don't know about? Toby disappeared from the graveyard. He decided to go find Black Zetsu to get some answers, hoping to get some useful information from him. After leaving the graveyard, Kakashi went to Naruto's residence on the way, without saying hello, but just peeking into the window from a distance. Naruto Uzumaki sat cross-legged on his bed, a copy of The Will of Fire lying beside his pillow. Judging by the worn cover, he had clearly studied this magnum opus diligently. To be honest, he also owned a copy of this masterpiece, but it had been gathering dust on a shelf. He most often read Icha Paradise. He even had a new anime book tucked away in his arms, which filled him with a mixture of excitement and shame. Naruto sat cross-legged on the bed, his eyes closed, his consciousness immersed in a huge cage, or rather, standing outside it. The iron cage was incredibly tall and wide, its long, vertical bars forming a massive door. A ceiling talisman was affixed to the center of the door, and inside was a nine-tailed fox, curled up like a small mountain. The fox was bound by faintly visible chains, its body emitting crimson bubbles. These were solidified chakra evaporating, like bubbling pustules burning with flames, radiating an evil aura that was both scorching and chilling. The tailed beast, Kurama, the Nine Tails. On that haunted night, the seemingly collapsing black sky outside the window, the muddy, bloodied corpses, and the terrifyingly malevolent aura in the air caused Kurama, sealed within Naruto Uzumaki, to open its eyes and actively connect with his consciousness. That night, Naruto finally learned that a tailed beast, imprisoned in an iron cage, resided within him. The fate of this important character in the original story was about to begin to deviate from its original trajectory. This deviation couldn't happen overnight, it needed to be addressed. Chapter 138 Kaguya Nami, I'm back. Their first encounter was far from pleasant, it was sudden and forced. Under the pressure of a threat to its survival, Kurama, the Nine-Tails, initiated a conversation with Naruto. That night, imprisoned and sealed within Naruto, Kurama sensed the evil permeating the air, an unprecedented aura of malevolence that roused it from its slumber. It was an evil it had never felt before, a pure and sinister evil, an evil that treated the entire world as its food source. The terrifying abyss-like aura seemed to awaken Kurama's most horrific memories. Through Naruto's eyes, it peered into the darkness of that night, confirming that a creature it had never seen before lurked within. Unlike those foolish and insignificant humans, Kurama could sense far greater terror from the malice permeating the air. Humans could at most seal me away, but that creature, it might devour me whole. This was the chill emanating from Kurama's very soul. Therefore, to avoid being devoured in his sleep one day, Kurama decided to teach Naruto some self-defense techniques, so that at least he could awaken in time for the next terrifying encounter. After the initial shock and horror, Naruto quickly accepted the presence of Kurama within him, happily unilaterally believing he had a partner for life. Every day, besides watching the Will of Fire, he would follow Kurama's guidance to train himself to become familiar with and withstand the chakra overflowing from Kurama into his body. This process was slow but painful, like boiling water flowing through his veins or ants crawling on his skin. But Naruto's endurance was unexpectedly strong. He persevered with unwavering willpower and, at Kurama's instruction, did not reveal these changes to the outside world. He still appeared to be the worst student in his class, but he knew very well that his body was becoming stronger every day, like a rough steel blank being repeatedly forged and hammered. The process was slow and steady, but over time, his body would be tempered into something almost inhuman. Only in this way, when he encountered that terrifying creature again, would he and the Kurama within him not be devoured alive. Kakashi returned home, undergoing a screening test at the medical department, a simple cut on his finger to observe the wound's healing. It was said that until the medical department found a better alternative, this screening test would be a routine procedure, and every ninja returning from a mission would have to undergo it. Kakashi locked the door, removed his headband, and channeled his chakra into his eye sockets. A strange, windmill-like pattern appeared in his pupils. He stared at himself in the mirror for a long time before finally putting his headband back on. He sat on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. After a while, he went to the wall of the next bedroom and took down a short sword that was hanging there. He drew the sword, its blade gleaming coldly, but a clear crack ran down its spine. This was a relic left by his father, Hatake Tsukumo, a short sword that had claimed countless lives, and also a broken sword. Since the sword broke, Hatake Kakashi had rarely touched a sword, instead focusing on mastering the Sharingan that Obito had left him, earning him the title of Copy Ninja Kakashi in the ninja world. But now, Kakashi's state of mind underwent a change he couldn't quite explain. Perhaps it was the figure in his mind. Perhaps it was the eerie and terrifying swordsmanship displayed by the two in Hueco Mundo, or perhaps it was the changes in the ninja world that gave him a strong sense of unease and urgency, or perhaps a combination of all three. Kakashi realized he couldn't rely too much on the Sharingan. Or rather, one cannot rely too much on a single power. One must possess more trump cards so that when facing demons, Hueco Mundo, and other possible unknown entities, and when confronted with their bizarre and complex abilities, one can have a fighting chance, instead of lying helplessly unconscious. Kakashi Hatake, the 50-50 ninja, is about to go live. Jiraiya's expression was not good after leaving the Hokage's office. The current situation in Konoha was far worse than he had anticipated. In fact, the dangers the entire ninja world might face in the future were far more complex and bizarre than he had imagined. Demons, Hueco Mundo? Each one seemed to know a little, yet also seemed completely ignorant, their depths and secrets unknown, but they all clearly held a condescending attitude towards humanity and were certainly not benevolent. In addition, there was the treacherous Kirigakure, the Tsunagakure that demanded exorbitant hush money, the lightning village that had recently begun to stir again, and the Iwagakure that one had to be constantly wary of. The ninja world was beset by internal and external troubles, and Konoha, in particular, was surrounded by enemies on all sides, outwardly strong but inwardly weak, seemingly on the verge of collapse. Jiraiya was ordered to stay in Konoha to guard against any possible crisis, whether it came from the Oni, Hueco Mundo, the Unknown, or other ninja villages. Why can't we announce this information to the entire ninja world? Jiraiya didn't even dare to ask this foolish and naive question. He was both angry and helpless, but ultimately nodded dejectedly in agreement to the Hokage's order. 2 days later, a group of ninja from Kusagakure arrived at Konoha after a long journey. This Kusagakure team consisted of 3 people, Hanafuda Sadara, Oni no Kami, and Kaguya Nami, who showed her true face. After their previous abrupt departure, they returned this day, bringing gifts from Kusagakure and a letter requesting assistance. You have achieved the achievement. I'm back. You have once again set foot on Konoha soil, and even the air here makes you feel good. P.S. With goodwill and peace, achievement points. 1000. Kaguya Nami wore a delicate, sunny smile as she extended her pale arm, allowing the Konoha medical team to make a cut. Hanafuji Sadara and Onizumi also extended their arms, letting the cuts be made. 3 sharp cuts appeared, and blood gushed out. Could this kind of idiotic screening test possibly stop them? If you want to determine if someone is a demon, just put them in the sun and it'll be clear. It's a pity that this highly confidential information is only known to Orochimaru right now. Kaguya Nami thought to herself. The 3 of them bandaged their wounds and entered Konoha, 1 in front and 2 behind. Hanafuji Sadara held an umbrella behind them to shield Kaguya Nami from the sun. Onizumi unfolded the sealing scroll and summoned a flatbed cart inside. On the cart was a row of pale corpses, lightly covered with a tattered cloth. Gui Xiangnan followed behind, pushing the cart. He didn't actually need to do this. He could have just spread the body out on the floor when they got to the Hokage's office. But he'd improved quite a bit lately. This was his way of putting it into ritual. All the overdue chapters are finally done. Suddenly, I felt relieved. Chapter 139. A knife is not used like this. The weather was fine and sunny. Even the air in Konoha seemed refreshingly crisp, invigorating the spirit. The corpses on the wooden cart exuded a chilling, fresh smell, a mixture of formaldehyde and chemical reagents. Like a layer of cling film covering the white Zetsu's bodies, the faint, peculiar scent permeated the air, adding a touch of life to the crispness. The flatbed cart chugged along the road, its wheels making a rattling sound as it smoothly arrived at the Hokage building. The cloth covering the bodies was lifted, revealing a row of deathly pale corpses. Although dead, the preservation treatment had preserved their appearances remarkably well, 10 identical corpses with dead fish eyes. The visual effect was shocking. The Anbu members helping with the escort gasped in shock. Hirozen Seireitei, puffing on his pipe and wearing his Hokage hat, stepped out, his pupils slightly contracting as he looked at the row of corpses that seemed to have been carved from the same mold. Are these human? Hirozen Seireitei's question went straight to the heart of the matter. They have human bodies and internal organs, but their muscles and skin are composed of plant fibers, as if they've undergone a collective plastic surgery. Kaguya Nami stepped forward, took the scalpel handed to her by Oni no Kami, and casually sliced open the skin of a corpse, cutting along the withered muscle veins. Sure enough, strange fibrous strands could be seen inside, like plant roots weaving together, one by one, looking like a spindle weaving the internal structure. You can't see it when a person is just dead, but after the corpse is soaked in a special agent and then the muscles completely atrophy, these fibrous strands slowly emerge from the muscles. Kaguya Nami pulled out the scalpel and relayed the information Mayuri Kuratsuchi had told her to Konoha. As for the treatment of that special agent, that was a secret of Kusagakure. Due to the limited medical research capabilities of Kusagakure, we cannot make an accurate judgment about these corpses, so we secretly sent them to Konoha, hoping to get a more accurate answer from Konoha, and also hoping to get Konoha's support. These corpses are definitely suspicious. These are problems that the Grass Ninja Village can't figure out. Hirozen Seireitei didn't doubt Kaguya Nami's words. The research level of these small ninja villages was indeed appalling. He silently observed Kaguya Nami. Then his gaze lingered on the faces of Hanafuji Sadara and Onizumi, finally settling on the black umbrella in Hanafuji Sadara's hand. He frowned slightly but didn't think much of it. Ninjas have all sorts of quirks and preferences, some like wearing masks, some like wearing bandages, and some like wearing green leather bodysuits. Relatively speaking, using an umbrella for sun protection is even less strange or objectionable. Besides, Hiruzen Seireitei wouldn't be deceived by Kaguya Nami's delicate and sunny face. The Chunin exams were still fresh in his mind. This person's values, if not insane, were definitely not normal. Support? Hiruzen Seireitei exhaled a smoke ring. Kaguya Nami took out an envelope from her pocket. It was a handwritten letter from Akaji Mori, the highest leader of the Grass Ninja Village, requesting assistance from the Hokage. Yes, Kusagakure is under the influence of this strange. Kaguya Nami pointed at the corpses, carefully choosing her words. Yes, a white terror has enveloped the village from underground. Hiruzen Seireitei tore open the envelope. The letter contained far more detail than Kaguya Nami's brief account, describing a much more serious situation. The words were almost tearful, revealing the writer's intense fear and desperation, their desperate hope that Konoha was their lifeline. Hiruzen Seireitei wasn't swayed by the emotional tone. He rationally analyzed the letter's true meaning. A strange white creature is monitoring Kusagakure 24/7 from underground. Recently, ninjas have been disappearing without a trace. Moriakaji senses an invisible, enormous black hand silently enveloping Kusagakure. This enormous black hand, going to such lengths and silently spying from the shadows, must have a grand scheme. In short, Kusagakure is in danger. Come quickly. Hiruzen Seireitei folded the letter and put it away carefully, his cloudy eyes revealing no emotion. What's so great about Kusagakure that it's being plotted against? This grand scheme must be related to demons. So, to save them or not? Hiruzen Seireitei weighed the pros and cons and made his decision. At this stage, Kusagakure was likely already making progress in their research on demons, and Konoha was already lagging behind. They absolutely couldn't allow any more news about demons to spread and leak out. Don't worry, Kusagakure is an ally of Konoha. Konoha will never stand idly by while its ally is in danger. Konoha will dispatch an elite team to accompany you back as soon as possible to deal with and resolve the crisis in Kusagakure. Hiruzen Seireitei smiled benevolently. Kaguya Nami also smiled gratefully. Oniso and Hanafuji exchanged a glance, manipulating their facial muscles to force out textbook-perfect, upright smiles. The dispatch of the support team would take some time to arrange, so the three from Kusagakure temporarily stayed in Konoha, patiently waiting. Kaguya Nami remained calm and obedient to Konoha's arrangements, waiting quietly and politely, spending the entire day indoors. As night fell, the three of them drew the curtains, turned off the lights, and went to bed early. Night gradually enveloped Konoha, and in the peaceful stillness, a crack was quietly pushed open in the window, letting in the outside air. The shadows of the folds in the curtains were visible, and ripples spread through the air, as if a ghostly figure had silently merged into the night. In the darkness, a sinister wind breathed almost imperceptibly, and a few fallen leaves revealed the stiff mask of the shaman behind them, his staring eyes merely fixed on the night, lost in thought. Hyuga clan residence. White lanterns hung outside the gate. In a room in the side courtyard, Hyuga Madara, his chest wrapped in bandages, sat in the corner facing a mirror, his eyes lifeless and stiff as he stared at his reflection. It was a deathly pale face, too grotesque, white eyes with bulging, twisted veins at their edges, and a cursed mark on his forehead etched with ugly lines. This is me, an ugly, cowardly version of myself. Hyuga Madara loathed the face in the mirror, a face that represented someone who had killed his comrades to survive, cruel and cowardly, ugly and grotesque. Despised and shunned by everyone, shunned and avoided, no one criticized him, but no one wanted to approach him either. If he was once a caged bird bound by a cursed mark, now he truly felt that the entire world had become a cold, icy prison, imprisoning him. Within it, there was only a chilling indifference that seemed to freeze his very soul. Hyuga Madara could recall his comrades with the sight of his murdered bodies the moment he closed his eyes, their venomous faces kept him awake. And when he opened his eyes, all he saw were cold, indifferent eyes. They wouldn't speak, but Hyuga Madara could see in their eyes that they wished him dead. Perhaps I should have died that day. Everyone probably wanted me to die that day. Hyuga Madara gripped the short sword tightly, aiming it at his brow, his 5 fingers clenching until they turned slightly blue. He still didn't dare to actually stab it. In the darkness, a blurry figure emerged behind Hyuga Madara, gently pinching the short sword between 2 fingers and steadily moving it away from the latter's brow. That's not how you use a sword. A gentle and magnetic voice entered Hyuga Madara's ears. "Thanks to a love letter to the point of obsession, for the 1,500-point donation, and thanks to Tower Climber, for the 1,500-point donation. Chapter 140 Lord Aizen has chosen me." The voice in the darkness was as gentle and magnetic as water, seemingly imbuing the cold night with a heartwarming power. Hyuga Madara looked up as the short sword was taken from his hand, two slender, pale white fingers, seemingly powerful. His eyes were dazed and unfocused, his neck stiff and slowly turning behind him. What came into view in the darkness was flowing brown hair obscuring the forehead, a pair of deep brown eyes as gentle as water, and a pair of old-fashioned black-rimmed glasses on the bridge of the nose. A gentle, refined smile graced the lips. This was a person whose very appearance and smile seemed to soothe the soul, bringing peace and tranquility. A strange feeling. Hyuga Madara stared blankly at the face before him. For some reason, looking at this unfamiliar face, he felt an inexplicable sense of closeness, like withered grass instinctively bending towards the sun. "Who are you? Why did you save me?" Hyuga Madara's voice was hoarse. Even if this person hadn't appeared, the short sword might not have pierced his forehead in the end. But there was actually someone in this world who would stop him from dying? I heard the sword weeping. Aizen gently held the short sword between two fingers, waving it lightly in front of Hyuga Madara. "Do you know? The purpose of weapon forging is to kill enemies and savor their blood, not to kill one's own master. A weapon that kills its master, even if it is corroded into rusty iron over thousands of years, will still weep silently." Hyuga Madara stared blankly at the cold short sword before him, its cold surface reflecting his own face. He murmured, "Can swords cry?" "Yes, young man. I don't know why you are tired of this world and choose to end your life, but perhaps your sword doesn't want you to leave like this, and I just happened to hear its call." Aizen bent down and placed the short sword back into Hyuga Madara's hand, bending the other's fingers one by one to grip the hilt, and smiled. "Can you feel it? Swords also have warmth. They will rejoice because of their master's joy, and they will weep because of their master's sorrow." Hyuga Madara gripped the hilt, his previously lifeless eyes seeming to rekindle with the breath of life. "I see loneliness and desolation in your eyes, a reflection of a soul riddled with wounds, but you're wrong." Aizen habitually adjusted his glasses, his voice filled with profound philosophy, like a wise mentor guiding a lost student. "Pain, despair, anger, none of these should be reasons for suicide. Even the most wounded soul should yearn for breath, greedily breathe. Do you know that in the prison of hell, death is cowardice, while striving to live is the precious courage?" Aizen's smile grew gentler, his voice seemingly penetrating the heart, giving the cowardly soul the deepest strength. "Besides, you are not alone. You still have the sword in your hand. Even if the whole world abandons you, your sword will not betray you." Hyuga Madara swallowed hard, staring blankly at the sword in his hand, looking at his reflection on the blade, as if the sword truly breathed, merging with his body, cold yet steadfastly accompanying him. "But they all want me dead." Hyuga Madara breathed heavily, looking up at the man who emerged from the darkness, as if the man had become the only light and guide for the rest of his life. Good and evil, right and wrong, life and death, are just shallow and narrow definitions of humanity. Nothing more than a cage that humanity has built for itself under the sky, illusory and absurd. Aizen still had that refined face, and his voice was still as gentle as water, but the meaning in his words was as sharp and piercing as a blade piercing the sky. "The road to escape the cage is long and difficult, but only after leaving can you see the true light of the sky." Hyuga Madara murmured to himself, repeating the words as if he wanted to imprint them completely into his soul. He wanted to see what the true light behind the sky looked like. "Who are you?" Hyuga Madara looked at Aizen with reverence, asking the same question he had asked at the beginning. "Can you take me away from this cage?" "I am Aizen Sasuke." Aizen softly uttered his name, replying with a smile, "The cage of fate can only be broken by oneself. I can only help you find the weapon to fight against fate. The long and arduous road ahead is still yours to walk." Hyuga Madara was slightly disappointed. "I hope that one day, when the entire sky changes color, you will be able to break free from this cage and stand behind me." Aizen Sasuke looked down at Hyuga Madara. Hyuga Madara raised his head, his gaze burning as he met Aizen's eyes. He heard encouragement and trust in that tone. Lord Aizen trusted him. One day, he would break free from this cage and stand behind him. At that moment, Hyuga Madara seemed to have rediscovered the meaning of life. Use the sword in your hand to cleave this cage, or use the power I bestow upon you to rust this iron prison. Aizen Sasuke reached out, holding up a strange fruit imprinted with spiral patterns. Hyuga Madara received the strangely patterned fruit with both hands. He understood that this fruit must be the weapon Aizen-sama spoke of, the one that could help him fight against fate. Remember, do not take your eyes, they should become your strength, not your shackles. What binds fate is never the mark etched on your forehead, but the soul imprisoned by cowardice. Do not betray your name, nor my expectations of you, Hyuga Madara. I await the day you stand behind me. With those words, Aizen Sasuke vanished before his eyes, merging into the darkness, disappearing from Hyuga Madara's world as if he had never been there. Yes, Lord Aizen, when the sky changes color, I will stand behind you. Hyuga Madara swore to himself in his soul. He understood. Since the whole world wanted him dead, he would live on. Because Lord Aizen knew his name. The sword might be weeping, but more importantly, it was because he was chosen by Lord Aizen. Hyuga Madara looked at the darkness that had returned to silence. He felt no betrayal, only endless gratitude and trust. The night was still cold, but a flame burned within him, illuminating his path. And at the deepest part of that path, where the sky led, a figure stood waiting for him. Hyuga Madara took a deep breath, cupped the strangely patterned fruit in his hands, buried his face in it, and his mouth opened wide, making frantic chewing sounds. Chapter 141 Your fate now belongs to. He gnawed, chewed, and swallowed, accompanied by gagging sounds. The strange, unpalatable fruit flesh was swallowed by Hyuga Madara, the sticky juice coating his mouth. His esophagus churned, his stomach and intestines churned, and a strange power surged into his body. Then, the air exhaled from his stomach flowed back down his esophagus, filling his mouth with a metallic taste. As if a demon were whispering in his mind, Hyuga Madara learned the name of this fruit, the rust fruit. It was like an innate instinct, directly etched into his soul, allowing him to understand how to use this power. Touching it could rust any metal it touched. Touch? Hyuga Madara instinctively gripped the hilt of his sword. A line of rust crawled up his fingertips onto the blade, and he frowned. My hand is part of my body, but the sword is also an extension of my body, and so is my chakra. Hyuga Madara pondered the true meaning of touch. He opened his Byakugan, looking at the chakra network flowing within his body. Unbeknownst to him, a strange color had appeared, rust seeping from the omnipresent flesh and blood, eerily permeating his chakra. Like a clear stream being murky by the falling rust, it was turning into a different color. Fortunately, thanks to the Byakugan's internal vision, Hyuga Madara could control these changes. He could either extract this power from his chakra and seal it within his flesh and blood, or he could instantly accelerate the rusting, making the chakra completely murky and rusty. Then, Hyuga Madara manipulated the chakra that had seeped into the short sword in his hand. The blade was instantly corroded, cracking and shattering inch by inch, the fragments of rust floating in the air. Hyuga Madara stared intently into his Byakugan, controlling the mutated chakra to envelop every single fragment of the broken blade. A massive amount of chakra converged and seeped into the rust, the floating debris gradually darkening from a rusty brown to a jet black color. Jet black rust debris. The sword should be hidden within my body. With a thought, Hyuga Madara absorbed the floating rust debris, mixed with chakra, back into his body. This process was extremely painful, as if countless tiny blades were tearing his flesh. Veins bulged in his arm, and black blood oozed from his pores. Enduring the excruciating pain, Hyuga Madara could see the sword, shattered into fragments, merging with the flesh of his arm. Hyuga Madara walked to a mirror and gently wiped the metal frame. Rust immediately surfaced, and a crack appeared in the middle, as if it had been cleaved by a dull, rusty iron blade. The cracks were jagged, with faint black glimpses visible, as if even rust could be poisoned. Hyuga Madara was drenched in sweat, his chakra nearly depleted, and his arms throbbed with excruciating pain, yet he only laughed, a suppressed and sinister laugh echoing in the room. A rusty blade can kill too, and a rusty blade is more likely to break the iron cage that binds me. Lord Aizen, I will not disappoint you. Hyuga Madara cleaned the room, lay back on the bed, and found an unprecedented peace. He closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. The night continued, and lost lambs still awaited rescue. Uchiha clan territory. Under the veil of night, a small figure carried a bucket of paint, repainting the gray walls that had been enclosed at the base with red paint, creating a slightly crooked fan-shaped emblem. The corpses of the clansmen had been removed. The blood and gore on the streets had been cleaned, and the air had long since dissipated the stench of blood. But with every breath Sasuke took, the nauseating stench of blood filled his nostrils and lungs. He could almost see the empty street teeming with the wandering bodies of his clansmen. They had never left, they were still here, their bloodshot eyes staring at him, staring into his life. They were dead, killed by Itachi, they were dead, their eyes gouged out one by one. The corpses buried in the memorial graves were all eyeless, unseeing eyes of their clansmen, leaving only him alive, alone and desperate in this world, his heart and eyes filled with hatred. Yet, he possessed only hatred, powerless. Sasuke couldn't kill Itachi, nor could he reclaim the land the village had reclaimed. He couldn't even breach the high walls surrounding the Root clan. All he could do was paint on the walls, deceiving himself. Originally the second son of the prestigious Uchiha clan, showered with love and affection, he tragically lost his entire clan overnight. The murderer was enraged. Uchiha Sasuke activated his single Tomo Sharingan, then fell into deep coma. When he awoke, his clansmen were being laid to rest. He wanted revenge against Uchiha Itachi, but who knew how many years he would have to wait? Would he ever even have the chance to avenge himself? The more he hated, the more desperate he became. Every day, Uchiha Sasuke felt his soul tormented. Hatred and despair were like two pythons binding him, relentlessly constricting and breaking him. Carrying a swaying bucket of pain home, the cold, empty room was devoid of life. Uchiha Sasuke didn't enter the main hall, he dared not go there, for he always saw two corpses lying on the floor. Sasuke Uchiha looked up at the sky. A crimson, eerie moon hung high in the dark, hazy expanse. Ever since he awoke that day, the moon in his eyes had always been red, never again pale and bright, stained with the blood of the Uchiha clan. He turned and went into his small room, locking the door behind him. The windows had long been boarded up, leaving the room pitch black, utterly devoid of light and sound. Sasuke didn't want a single ray of blood-red moonlight to penetrate, nor a breath of air to flow in. Only in this way could he avoid hearing the agonizing screams of his clansmen before their tragic deaths, and keep those empty, ferocious gazes outside. The darkness was like a completely sealed iron house, locking Sasuke in. No light, no sound, no life, no hope. He was utterly alone in the world. He was like a living corpse, curled up in a corner, listening to his own faint heartbeat, quietly savoring the hatred within him. The hatred was excruciating, yet this extreme pain gave him a morbid stimulation, like some kind of addictive anesthesia, making Uchiha Sasuke feel that he was still a person, still alive, breathing painfully. Then, a cold breath touched his cheek. The pores on Uchiha Sasuke's cheek trembled and contracted, the hairs on his face stood on end, and his heart seemed to stop for a moment. There was someone in the room, someone in the darkness, breathing in his ear. Uchiha Sasuke was terrified. He braced himself with one hand, his legs spinning in the air, kicking hard to the side of his ear, while the black tomo in his pupils spun wildly. Snap! A crisp snap echoed in the air. Uchiha Sasuke felt as if his feet had kicked a soft whip, the cold, slippery touch immediately wrapping around his calves, and then, he was lifted upside down, head first. His Sharingan was completely black, he could see nothing, no human outline, no trace of chakra flowing through his body. A deathly silence. Uchiha Sasuke was suspended upside down from the ceiling, his legs tightly bound, a sharp, curved blade pressed against his brow. He couldn't see, but he could conjure a horrifying image, a serpentine tentacle dangling and coiling around him, from which a strange blade snaked out, gently slicing open his brow. Blood dripped from his brow, the only sound in the room, a chilling patter. The person breathing there was nowhere to be seen, perhaps standing on the floor, perhaps perched on the ceiling, or perhaps crouching before him, watching him intently. A brief yet endless silence, broken only by the sound of his own bleeding, overwhelmed him with terror. This silent oppression was even more terrifying than the bloodshed of the massacre of his clan. "Who are you? What do you want?" Sasuke Uchiha asked in a hoarse voice. Breathing came from the darkness, right in front of Sasuke. The cold breath was devoid of warmth, and the voice was like a wind blowing from the underworld, a whisper of a demon. "I heard the plea in your soul, I smelled the unyielding hatred in the air. I love this hatred brewing in humble despair, it's the most beautiful scent in the world, so I came." The voice was eerie and sinister, devoid of any human emotion, sending chills down Sasuke's spine and making his throat dry. "Human, you begged for my arrival, didn't you?" A face emerged from the darkness, pressed close to Sasuke's face. Even without light, Sasuke's eyes widened, and finally, a pale, delicate face appeared before him, a pair of dark, scarlet eyes staring back at him. Pale skin, features unlike any human's, breath chillingly cold, and a pale top hat on its head. Not human, but a demon. The word flashed through Uchiha Sasuke's mind. A chill ran through him, yet within that meaning lay a morbid excitement. He gasped, "You're a demon." "If you are, then that's right, yes, it's me who has begged for your arrival day and night." "Begged for my arrival? Are you preparing to offer yourself up for my meal?" A sinister voice laughed. "As long as I can avenge myself, I'm willing to give everything, even if you have to eat me." Uchiha Sasuke answered without a moment's hesitation. "Indeed, hatred is the most delicious emotion for humans. I love the hatred in your eyes. I am Muzan Kibutsuji, and I am willing to accept your plea." Muzan Kibutsuji lightly touched the crack between Sasuke Uchiha's eyebrows with his fingernail, and said in a low voice, "But I don't like to directly avenge humanity. I prefer to watch you kill each other. Therefore, I will grant you the seed of power. This seed needs hatred and blood to nourish it and grow strong." "The seed of power?" Sasuke Uchiha gritted his teeth. "That's fine. What do you want me to give?" "Don't worry, I don't need your flesh and blood. I only need you to become a pawn in my hands." A hideous parasite protruded from Muzan Kibutsuji's forehead and quickly burrowed into Sasuke Uchiha's eyebrows. He laughed. "This is only half a seed of power. Once you have fully adapted to and developed this seed, it will tell you where to find me to obtain your other half. Why not give it to me at the same time?" Sasuke Uchiha was unwilling to wait. "Because you're not qualified yet. That half seed will burst your body. Come find me again when you're qualified to become a candidate for the 12 demon moons." Muzan Kibutsuji grinned, revealing his perfectly white teeth, and warned, "Remember, your life now belongs to me. Don't die so easily out there." Muzan Kibutsuji's figure vanished from the room. His voice still lingered in the room. "Uchiha Sasuke, I'm looking forward to what kind of surprise you'll bring me." Uchiha Sasuke didn't have time to ponder the deeper meaning of those words. He lost his balance and fell headfirst to the ground, a sudden, excruciating pain shooting through his heart. Abruptly, a cold, unfamiliar voice echoed in his mind. The half-seed of power he had obtained could speak. Sasuke Uchiha froze on the ground. He clearly heard the voice coming directly from his mind. Suppressing his fear, he asked, "What are you?" "Sasuke Uchiha, you are the lucky one chosen by Muzan Kibutsuji. You can call me number 5. I reside within your heart, and I can help you gain power." Number 5's voice entered his mind, leaving the rest of its sentence unsaid, "And I can also ensure you obey." Number 5? A strange name. Sasuke licked his lips. He didn't care about such things, he only cared about gaining the power of revenge. "How will you help me gain power?" "Anger, hatred, are merely signs of weakness." Number 5's voice was rational and cold. "Emotions that should be stripped away from humans are useless, but Uchiha are different. The Sharingan is an evil power born from negative and dark emotions. I can help you accelerate this process, to control the power bestowed by hatred. For example, like this." Suddenly, his heart pounded like a pump, his blood roared and surged, his lungs expanded and contracted rapidly, and his liver seemed to tremble slightly. Sasuke's organs were in turmoil, his metabolism and neurotransmitter activity skyrocketing. Simultaneously, his senses of sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste were all cut off, plunging him into an abyss of endless darkness. The world was empty except for him, utterly shrouded in deathly silence and darkness. Remember, feel, amplify, the pain, despair, and hatred within you. In the enclosed darkness, Number 5's cold voice echoed in Sasuke's consciousness like a surround sound. Fear, anger, despair, hatred, and collapse, all the dark emotions festered in the darkness, engulfing Sasuke like an endless tide. Perhaps it was a moment, perhaps a millennium. Uchiha Sasuke, drenched in sweat, collapsed to the ground, utterly exhausted. He slowly opened his eyes, two malevolent tomos swirling eerily in his blood-red pupils. "Continue." Tears streamed from Uchiha Sasuke's eyes, but his mouth twisted into an exaggerated, maniacal grin. "Your body can't take it. You need to slowly adapt and develop." Number 5 resolutely refused. Although they were symbiotic with Uchiha Sasuke, Kaguya Nami had granted Number 5 a high degree of autonomy. In other words, while it seemed that Uchiha Sasuke controlled the body, Number 5 truly dictated his will and actions. I don't want to slowly adapt. I don't want to wait any longer. Uchiha Sasuke could feel the power surging in his pupils. He had tasted the sweetness. He wanted to become stronger as quickly as possible and obtain the other half of the seed from Muzan Kibutsuji. The fastest way to speed things up is through hunting. Number 5's cold voice carried a sinister undertone. You need to hunt, to feed yourself with the dark hearts of your own kind. Slaughter is always the fastest way to become stronger. As soon as he finished speaking, Uchiha Sasuke saw his shoulder tear apart like silken threads, turning into grotesque tendons and scythes that danced wildly in the air. This will be dangerous, but I can help you choose your target and devise a hunting plan, because I also enjoy the delicious taste of chewing on tender hearts. Okay. Uchiha Sasuke watched the tendon scythe swung like after images, a dark, cold light gleaming into his crimson, evil Sharingan eyes, and agreed without hesitation. The pawns planted in Konoha are in place. And by the way, please vote for me. Chapter 142 Feel the Pain, a gift in return for Akatsuki. Why does eating the hearts of my own kind make me stronger? Uchiha Sasuke agreed without hesitation, but a hint of doubt lingered in his heart. Having experienced a painful deception, Uchiha Sasuke had matured. He believed he was no longer a naive boy easily fooled, and some questions needed to be thoroughly investigated and understood before he could feel at ease. 5 miles, no teaching, Number 5 said coldly. Horses grow fat and run faster by eating grass, birds grow wings and fly higher by eating insects, and so do we. Number 5, of course, wouldn't admit to being greedy. He explained coldly, when you were chosen by Muzan Kibutsuji to parasitize your heart and become one with him, you began to transcend the lower realm of humanity. We hunt humans, consuming their most delicious parts, both to absorb powerful nutrition and to hone our killing skills. Hunting, becoming stronger, hunting, a continuous cycle until we fully develop the limits of this body. Only then will we be qualified to obtain the other half of the seed, at which point we will completely break free from the shackles of humanity and become a species truly superior to humans, demons. Number 5 sketched a grand blueprint for Uchiha Sasuke, even subtly replacing the concept of you with we. Then let's begin. Starting tonight, Uchiha Sasuke couldn't wait to begin his hunt for the villagers. Alright, tonight is a perfect time. Number 5 brandished its menacing tentacles, its sharp blade deftly rotating the doorknob. First, shall we choose the target? Uchiha Sasuke gazed at the blood moon in the sky, inhaling the lingering scent of blood in the air. He hoped this persistent crimson would spread throughout Konoha. No, first, learn to disguise and conceal yourself. Don't expose your hatred when you're weak, only reveal your cruel fangs in the moment of the hunt. Number 5 retracted its sinewy side, disguising itself as a harmless arm. Its voice echoed softly in Uchiha Sasuke's mind. I can help you control your expressions, but you need to control the killing intent in your eyes yourself. Number 5 immediately took control of its facial muscles. Let's begin our first hunt. Tonight will be long. Uchiha Sasuke stepped into the blood moon's darkness. You have achieved the achievement, the mastermind behind fate, the mastermind behind fate. On the stage of destiny, those you bestow power upon are your chosen pawns. From the moment they accept your gifts, their fate for the rest of their lives is destined to be manipulated by you. P.S. Every gift of fate has a price tag attached by you. Achievement points. 2000. The night continued. In the center of the wide street, a shadow gradually emerged. It was a deep, jet-black robe, printed with blood-red burning auspicious clouds. As it moved, it seemed as if red clouds were writhing in the night. A figure was hidden beneath the black robe, and on the face was a pale white mask with spiraling patterns, which did not look like a good person. A pupil was revealed in the center of the spiraling patterns. The pupil was a clear black and white eye, but in the blink of an eye, it seemed as if a layer of colored contact lens had been applied, turning into a red and black kaleidoscope. I am Toby. Kaguya Nami revealed her form and attire, her eyes blinking playfully. The only drawback is that my pupils can only mimic the shape and pattern of the Sharingan, but I don't possess the Sharingan's power itself. Kaguya Nami wasn't entirely satisfied. Her ability to completely mimic Sharingan still had a lot of room for improvement. Unfortunately, her abilities were rather lazy, lacking the ability to cultivate and evolve autonomously. Kaguya Nami pulled out a notebook from her pocket, opened it, and inside were pre-planned tasks she needed to accomplish upon arriving in Konoha. 1. Deliver the white Zetsu's body to Konoha and have Hirozen Seireitei sign for it. 2. Help Aizen Sasuke increase his fame. abduct a fanatic fam from Konoha for him, save a lost soul, and prepare a stage and troupe for his future appearance. 3. Plan a new life path for the chosen one, Uchiha Sasuke, implant a mentor in him, help him shorten the distance between himself and Uchiha Itachi more quickly, and lay the foundation for him to become a candidate for the 12 demon moons in the future. 4. Approach Naruto Uzumaki as Kaguya Nami to deepen their friendship. Kaguya Nami took out a pen and decisively crossed out item 4. 5. Play the role of Toby. Kaguya Nami was currently working on this. There were too many behind-the-scenes manipulators in this tiny ninja world, leading to severe internal competition and attrition. Kaguya Nami believed it was necessary to weed out some unqualified competitors in advance to raise the industry's average level. Toby's intelligence wasn't suited for being a behind-the-scenes manipulator. Being active in the spotlight and adjusting the atmosphere was more in line with his abilities. Of course, the reason Kaguya Nami made this decision was, the White Zetsu had surrounded Kusagakure from underground, so as the true behind-the-scenes manipulator of Kusagakure, he couldn't be completely ignorant of etiquette. At least a return gift was necessary. 6. Retrieve a collectible from Konoha. Kaguya Nami looked at the last item, gently twirling her pen, and ticked it off beforehand. She had actually already identified this item during her last visit to Konoha, even scouting its location, but she hadn't taken it. Because Muzan Kibutsuji disdained coveting human possessions, but Toby was different. In fact, Kaguya Nami had several spare brains. She could easily use one of them to write her diary or memos, like Konoha, but she preferred the ritual of writing on paper. In the darkness, Toby made no attempt to conceal herself. She opened her notebook with one hand, twirling her pen as she wrote, her step steady as she walked towards the Hokage building. The guards at the Hokage building's entrance were astonished to see a completely concealed figure walking straight towards them, head down, writing. His movements were furtive and suspicious, exuding an arrogant disregard for others. The scene was truly unsettling. "Halt! Who goes there?" a guard from the ambush shouted sharply, pulling open his tool bag at his waist and gripping the hilt of a kunai. "I'm just going in to grab something and I'm leaving. Please don't block my way." Toby used the most polite words to deliver the most arrogant provocation. At the same time, Toby slowly raised his head in the darkness, revealing his signature Sharingan. His black robe with red clouds fluttered without wind, and an aura of evil terror erupted from him. Sharingan? The Anbu was startled, mistaking the man wearing the spiral-patterned mask for Uchiha Itachi. He immediately threw two kunai at the man opposite him. Simultaneously, another Anbu quickly activated the alarm. Its piercing sound tearing through the quiet darkness, Konoha's upgraded security system after the demon incident. Instantly, awakened Konoha ninjas jumped out of windows, converging on the Hokage building from various streets. "You didn't have to die. Wouldn't it have been better to live?" Abi casually flicked away a kunai, his feet not moving, his figure instantly surging forward. The air howled, and the two Anbu blocking his way heard a death knell tearing through the air, then felt a chill in their throats, a line of crimson blood spurting from their chests. The two corpses had broken throats, their necks twisted into grotesque shapes, their expressions frozen in terror. Then, "Feel the pain." Abi stepped over the corpses, standing at the entrance of the Hokage building, slowly turning to look at the Konoha ninjas gathering from all directions. Beneath his feet, rings of blood surged eerily from the ground, spreading silently and rapidly, outlining a bloody ritual image on the ground. This ritual image writhed and breathed on the ground, a visible blood curtain rising in the air, a chilling aura brewing within it. Some ninjas rushed in, while others sensed something was wrong and stopped outside the ritual image, cautiously observing. Afei didn't care. He indifferently watched the ninjas rushing into the blood sacrifice, exposing the eerie kaleidoscope on his mask to everyone's view. Then he turned and walked into the Hokage building, his figure and steps forming a series of ghostly after-images as he swept down the stairs. Boom! The door to the Hokage's office shattered. Kaguya Nami glanced around, walked to the innermost locked cabinet, and forcefully pulled it open, grabbing the sealing scroll lying quietly inside. "Put it down." A fast Anbu burst through the window, his hands forming a hand seal, and the ground exploded with spikes that rolled and shot towards Kaguya Nami. "Have you ever heard the sound of blood blooming into thorns?" Kaguya Nami glanced at the ninja who had also chased after him from outside, a sinister mockery coming from beneath his spiral-patterned mask. He shattered the flying spikes with his foot, lightly stepping on the chest of the ninja by the window. The latter's chest caved in and exploded, and he flew backward. Outside the Hokage building, beyond the blood sacrifice diagram, Jiraiya and Kakashi, who had rushed there, stood at the edge of the diagram, looking up at the sky. A sharp sound came from above. Whoosh! A heavy object was falling at high speed to the ground. A viscous, crimson mass plummeted from the sky, falling so fast that it even left a crimson trail in their retinas. With a deafening crash, it shattered the ground, and they could see that the viscous substance was clearly blood bursting from a chest cavity. The object was a mangled corpse, its joints and flesh shattered, splattering blood like a burst of thorns. Thud! 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 The thorns splattered, sending blood and flesh flying. Jiraiya raised his hand to shield his face, his hand clinging to a gooey lump of flesh. "Who are you?" Jiraiya asked grimly, staring at the black robe with red clouds in the center of the diagram. Kakashi stared intently at the spiral-patterned mask, his gaze seemingly trying to see through it and glimpse the true face behind it. It was the figure he had seen in his mind when he fainted. So, it wasn't an illusion, it was a real person. But why didn't this person feel familiar? It doesn't feel like Obito. Am I mistaken? Kakashi didn't know whether to be happy or sad. He let out a long sigh. Listen carefully, it's coming. Kaguya Nami held up her index finger to block the mask. She looked at the kunai shooting towards her, standing still without dodging. The moment her body touched the kunai, it blurred into a transparent shadow, the shadow emitting a dark light, like a ghost without substance, allowing the kunai to pass through its body. Boom! Centered on him, a blood-red light rose from the ground. A bloody ritual image rippled through the air, a bloody curtain of blood. Thick blood swelled and exploded from the writhing veins in the ground, then surged wildly like a tsunami. Blood surged, endless blood welled up from the ground, pushing and shoving, congesting and transforming into a raging tide that engulfed all the living beings in the ritual image. My God! The ninjas who rushed into the ritual image's area, unable to escape in time, were swallowed by the blood curtain in an instant. They desperately ran and struggled to break free, but the viscous blood waves were like quagmire, pulling at their bodies, tearing and ripping their blood vessels, causing their blood to spray and merge into the blood curtain. The whole scene was bloody and eerie, with a three-dimensional feel like an abstract oil painting, like a demonic apocalypse painted on the ceiling of a church, giving believers an urge to worship. Unfortunately, the ninjas did not understand faith. The screams were incessant, but they stopped abruptly in the blink of an eye. The blood tide receded, the blood curtain dissipated into nothingness, and the figure with black background and red clouds in the center of the arena was long gone, leaving only haphazardly lying, shriveled, necrotic sacks drained of blood. Jiraiya's pupils contracted sharply. He saw the blood-covered curtain, countless viscous blood surging like a tsunami, swallowing and plunging back into the black and red cloud, flowing along the spiral pattern of the mask and into the still, eerie Mangekyou Sharingan. Is it the power of that Mangekyou? Jiraiya knew many secrets of the ninja world, and he had some understanding of the meaning of the windmill pattern in that eye. The Mangekyou Sharingan, the ultimate evolution of the Sharingan. Each Mangekyou Sharingan contains a strange and terrifying power. Clearly, the power of the masked man's Mangekyou was that strange, ethereal power, or the terrifying power of sucking blood. Of course, these two manifestations could also be different applications of the same ability. For now, it was unknown. Jiraiya retreated rapidly, his hands forming hand seals, and earthen walls arched up from the ground, blocking the blood-splattered flesh and debris, protecting all the Konoha ninja behind him. He then leaped onto one of the arched walls and looked into the blood-covered curtain. The crimson tide of blood surged and slowly dissipated, the black robe with red clouds fluttered wildly, and the spiraling white mask was corroded by blood, outlining scarlet patterns that made it look even more evil and sinister. The crimson ritual image that had been writhing on the ground crumbled, as if it had never existed, leaving only spiderweb-like grooves and shriveled, dehydrated corpses. Jiraiya swept over the desiccated corpses on the ground, snorted angrily, and stomped on the arched wall, shattering it. He leaped high into the air like a toad, his cheeks bulging and his nostrils emitting a pungent smell of kerosene. Then he opened his mouth and spat out a blast. Fire release, great flame bullet. The chakra condensed into black oil exploded and burned, the surging flames growing and expanding like a cancerous tumor, crackling and popping as they tore at the air. The ground in its path instantly melted into charred black, and the flames roared as they engulfed Toby. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Konoha's number 1 in hatred. I am a demon who crawled out of the abyss of death. A piercing alarm ripped through the night. A terrifying stench of blood spread on the wind, engulfing the entire Hidden Leaf village, the scent of crimson particles permeating the air. Uchiha Sasuke, who had just stepped out of his house, ready to begin his first hunt, was taken aback. I haven't even started yet. Where's this bloody smell coming from? Hunting requires stealth and concealment, and chaos is our favorite stage. Number 5 said rationally and coldly. Don't bother with changes in the external environment, we're not qualified to participate in this bloody feast yet. What we need to focus on are the unnoticed scraps in the corners of the stage. That's our food. Number 5 instructed Uchiha Sasuke. 140 meters ahead, a humanoid creature is rapidly approaching from the right corner of the street. The scent, temperature, humidity, and pheromones in the air allow number 5 to instantly detect nearby food, a parasitic beast's hunting instinct. With the help of this body's subtle manipulation of chakra, number 5 can sense more of the dynamics of food, such as the frequency of life fluctuations, the energy density contained in cells, the strength of muscles and bones, and so on. In short, without getting close, number 5 can detect living people nearby like radar and classify their strength according to the information he senses. Kill him, he's our first prey. Number 5's voice transmitted into Uchiha Sasuke's mind. Lower your head, suppress your killing intent, maintain your current pace and move forward. He hasn't noticed us. Uchiha Sasuke took a deep breath, lowered his head and acted exactly as number 5 instructed, a short sword quietly sliding down from his sleeve. Coming. An Anbu turned around the corner, glanced at Uchiha Sasuke who was walking slowly against the wall but didn't pay any attention, and rushed towards the Hokage building. Attack. In the instant they passed each other, Uchiha Sasuke suddenly looked up, revealing a pair of eyes brimming with murderous intent. His sleeve flicked up, and a short sword shot out like a venomous snake, its fierce, swift, and insidious fangs biting towards the Anbu's chest. Sizzle. Clang. Hot blood splattered, staining Uchiha Sasuke's pale face. He gritted his teeth and thrust the sword, the blade piercing his chest flesh, but becoming stuck between his ribs. The Anbu, caught off guard, reacted quickly, gripping the blade horizontally with one hand, simultaneously raising his right foot high, aiming a kick at Uchiha Sasuke's head. Uchiha Sasuke was horrified, his head snapping back, but the foot still grazed his temple. His vision went black, and a burning, salty taste filled his mouth and nose. A sharp, gaping wound, the skin and flesh torn open, grazed by a toe, the white bone exposed to the chill of the air. Blood gushed out in a straight line, staining his eyelids crimson. Uchiha Sasuke crashed to the ground, his internal organs seemingly displaced, spitting out several mouthfuls of black blood. He scrambled to his feet in horror. The Anbu, whose ribs were lodged in a blade, also spat out a mouthful of blood. Behind the animal mask was a face of furious terror. His heart had almost been pierced. As the only surviving Uchiha orphan of Konoha, the Anbu recognized his attacker instantly from those eyes. Enraged, the Anbu's narrowed eyes fixed on Uchiha Sasuke, a sinister smile curving his lips beneath the mask. He slowly pulled the short sword from his chest, gripped it in a backhand, and brought it down in a slash. The Anbu is the Hokage's direct guard. Attacking the Anbu is tantamount to treason, a capital offense. Sasuke Uchiha was horrified. His Sharingan eyes spun wildly, the images reflected on his retinas slowing down. He braced himself with one hand, staggering to dodge, a gruesome gash appearing on his shoulder. Sasuke's eyes widened in fury, his body twisting in midair, the whistling of blades ringing in his ears, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. "Help me!" Sasuke roared, spitting blood and saliva from between his teeth. "Don't you want to complete the first kill alone?" Number 5 said indifferently. Although humans are fragile and easily broken beings, killing is not a simple matter. It requires precise and skillful methods, and the line between hunting and being killed is always very thin. The Anbu member froze, his pupils shrinking beneath his mask, his attention instantly scanning his surroundings. There was no one else around. Did Sasuke have an accomplice? Where was he hiding? A chill ran down the Anbu's spine. His eyes, which had been scanning the surroundings, returned to Uchiha Sasuke. Then, A chill ran down his spine. He saw that Uchiha Sasuke's right shoulder seemed to have been completely ripped off, the flesh twisting and turning into a sinewy tendon, wrapped around his calf and ankle. The next instant, the thigh was severed in the middle, a blood-soaked blade emerging from the body like cutting tofu, vertically slicing away from the brow. Snap! The mask shattered, a long, straight line of blood running through it, like a painting torn in half. The corpse was split in two, split open, blood-soaked organs spraying and piling up on the ground. Uchiha Sasuke stood up unsteadily in the pool of blood and mud, panting heavily as he stared at the dismembered body. The heart beneath his ribs was gone, and the soft chewing sounds came from his right hand. The gash on his body, cleaved by the knife, was being pulled inwards, the flesh stitched together, leaving only a thin scar. First kill complete. Number 5 murmured, devouring the heart. Uchiha Sasuke remained silent for a long time, then picked up the short sword from the ground and snarled, "Continue. Teach me the simplest way to kill. This is a profound art, but the more you kill, the more you'll naturally learn." Number 5's voice remained cold. It was subtly shaping Uchiha Sasuke into the form it desired, both for its own snack and to better complete the task assigned by Kaguya Nami. "Wipe off the blood, change into clean clothes, and we'll try again." Number 5 commanded Uchiha Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke didn't offer any opinions, he was gradually getting used to obeying Number 5's orders. Tonight, the first and most deeply hidden serial killer in Konoha's history was born. The spewing flames of oil swept across the ground, scorching the crevices left by the blood sacrifice, and an overwhelming cloud of black and red oil surged toward the center. Affedi flipped over, bracing himself with one hand, his legs moving like a whirlwind, the swirling airflow meeting the onrushing oil flames like an air wall blocking the sea of fire. Affedi tapped the ground with one hand, his brute force instantly shattering the ground, fragments of stone exploding and swirling around him. He twirled his robe, creating a circle of stones that rained down, shattering the air wall, penetrating the sea of fire, and turning into burning oil bombs. Spinning in a fan shape. The oil bombs were fierce, embedding themselves in the arched stone walls, instantly revealing charred cracks. What terrifying power! Jiraiya's eyelids twitched, his feet stomping through the area of oil bombs, his hand forming a Rasengan, which he aimed at Affedi's mask. Affedi leaned back to dodge, the mask cracking slightly as the swirling air current swept across it, but the Sharingan pattern visible through the mask remained coldly still, completely unmoved. He twisted his body 90 degrees backward, his feet planted firmly on the ground, without making any apparent movement, maintaining this bizarre posture as he slid backward. At the same time, one foot lashed out, the air crackling crisply, the kick as sharp as a whip, the instep as straight as a knife, almost grazing Jiraiya's nose. The biting wind cut across his nose like a knife, blood gushing from his abundant capillaries, the soreness and pain assaulting his eyes, causing uncontrollable tears to well up. "Oh?" crying, Affedi mocked, his tone infuriating. He sprang back like a spring, his toes slamming into the ground, several flashing after images creating distance between himself and Jiraiya. Then his right hand rested beside the mask, waving lightly, a farewell gesture. "Trying to run?" Jiraiya laughed in fury, his hair and beard bristling wildly, his silver hair cascading like a waterfall, swelling and trembling like a hedgehog. Countless strands of hair transformed into silver needles, forming a fine rain curtain that covered Obi from all directions. Obi eerily shimmered into ghostly form, allowing the needles to pierce his body, then transformed into shadow and merged into the night, disappearing before Jiraiya's eyes. Countless steel needles were embedded in the ground, a gentle breeze swirling in the air, yet not a trace could be found. Invisible? Jiraiya's eyes widened, but he remained calm. His hands swiftly formed hand seals, barrier, heavenly canopy formation. A transparent sphere emerged from his body, and under Jiraiya's control, it began to expand outwards in a ring shape, quickly growing to a diameter of several hundred meters, like a giant transparent bowl, enveloping everything within it. The air inside the bowl-shaped cover seemed to be tainted by a slowly flowing liquid. Inanimate objects remained undisturbed, but any moving creatures would have their outlines blurred by the obstructing liquid, causing them to slip through. There. Jiraiya created two shadow clones, turning simultaneously to lock onto the edge of the bowl-shaped cover, where a humanoid shadow was moving outwards. Its steps were unhurried and measured, as if it were strolling leisurely. The figure paused, seemingly surprised and annoyed at being discovered. Standing still, Watching the two Jiraiya's rush towards it, it suddenly let out a cold laugh, breaking through its invisibility and striking Jiraiya's chest with a powerful blow. The terrifying force instantly blasted one shadow clone into dust and smoke, while simultaneously retaliating with a kick that shattered the other shadow clone at the waist. Jiraiya's heart sank. Although shadow clones were inferior to the original body and easily shattered, their instant destruction suggested that this person had been showing mercy, no, feigning weakness? Something was very wrong. Toby shattered the shadow clone with a punch and a kick, stepping onto the arched wall. A spiral mask looked down at the Konoha ninja on the ground. A sinister laugh escaping his throat. "Are you sure you don't want me to leave?" Toby vanished from his spot, reappearing abruptly within the Konoha ninja's encirclement. A series of shrill screams and splattered blood erupted as the nearest ninjas exploded into mangled pieces, like plastic blocks. "That's going to kill a lot of people." Toby raised his hand, and two snaking chains emerged from his black robe, transforming into deadly serpents that frantically licked at the surrounding flesh. One by one, ninjas who couldn't dodge in time had their necks snapped, their waists severed, and their throats pierced. Blood gushed out like rain from the two raging chains, their flesh torn and mangled by the swirling wind, then transformed into terrifying stray bullets, sweeping across the surroundings haphazardly. In an instant, corpses riddled with holes flew up and down, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. The entire battlefield instantly became a meat grinder. The two long, black chains, saturated with blood, lashed out at the blood-soaked landscape with a hissing, serpentine shriek. Yet, at the center, the black cloud of red remained untouched by the rain. A sinister, still kaleidoscope gazed emotionlessly at the muddy red carpet spread beneath its feet. The scene seemed familiar. But that time, it was demons that had escaped from hell. This time, it was living people creating a living hell. Kakashi stared intently, but he couldn't get close. The swirling chains were impenetrable, like a walking storm of blood and rain, devouring and tearing to shreds anyone who dared to approach. A ninja unleashed a ninjutsu attack, but it failed to hit the target. The black-robed figure in red robes, wielding a serpentine rope, moved like a ghost, vanishing in an instant and reappearing before the ninja who had unleashed the ninjutsu. The latter was instantly torn to shreds, a shower of blood. Targeted ninjutsu failed to hit its target, while area of effect ninjutsu risked friendly fire. The numerical advantage of Konoha's home ground became their biggest hindrance, hindering their attacks and leaving them helpless as the swirling serpentine ropes devoured lives. Clang. The serpentine ropes suddenly stopped. Toby appeared beside a ninja, grabbing his throat, lifting him off the ground, and tearing his throat with his fingernails before tossing him to the ground. In the deathly silence of the bloody hell, the ninja's breath escaped his throat. Jiraiya stood frozen, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at the spiral mask. If looks could kill, Toby would have been torn to pieces. The ninjas who seemed to be surrounding Toby were actually all hostages in his hands, making Jiraiya hesitant to act. Despite his immense strength, he showed no martial ethics whatsoever. Jiraiya had never encountered such a treacherous and ruthless enemy in his entire life. "Shall we continue?" Toby casually flicked the chain, a layer of bloody flesh peeling away. He looked around, seeing Jiraiya's bloodshot eyes, Kakashi's furrowed brows, Might Guy's bulging veins, Hiruzen Seireitei's wrinkled face, and the surrounding Konoha ninja breathing heavily. "Perhaps you can spare me, but I promise, tonight, every leaf falling from Konoha will be stained a wet red," Toby said earnestly. "I can still dance for one more day, so, can you let me leave?" Jiraiya stared intently at the spiral mask, imprinting it firmly in his heart. On his kill list, this person had risen to the top. Let him go. Hiruzen Seireitei arrived, his cloudy eyes bloodshot. He stared at the eerie kaleidoscope, a storm raging within him. His voice hoarse, he ordered Konoha to let him pass. "Who are you?" Kakashi's throat was dry, his heart burning with an intense desire to know the true face beneath the mask. "The darkness will be dispelled, the dawn is coming." Toby cracked his neck, a sinister voice emanating from beneath the mask, seemingly a declaration to the world, "And I am the demon who crawled back from the abyss of death of the old era, to see the dawn of a new era." The echo reverberated amidst the blood. Jiraiya withdrew his barrier technique, and Toby vanished into the darkness before everyone's eyes. The three people from Kusagakure, arriving late, squeezed in from behind. Kaguya Nami, looking at the mangled corpses, gasped in shock, asking Kakashi, who stood frozen in place, What happened? Happy Dragon Boat Festival in advance. Please vote for me with a monthly pass. Chapter 144. I finally glimpsed the truth. Dawn broke. The battle casualty statistics for the night lay on the Hokage's desk. 21 dead, 7 seriously wounded, and 47 slightly wounded. Notably, 2 bodies weren't among the rest, but died separately in relatively remote locations. The cause of death and the reasons behind it are pending further investigation. Additionally, the scroll of seals is missing, confirmed to have been stolen by the man with the spiral mask last night. Hiruzen Seireitei puffed on his pipe, looking at the chaotic office, the broken windows and shattered doors. A wave of anger rose in his chest, which he exhaled along with the murky smoke. The darkness will eventually be dispelled, the dawn is coming, the demons who have crawled back from the abyss of death in the old era, to see the light of a new era. 2 lines were hastily written on the open notebook on the desk, the 2 sentences left by the man with the spiral mask when he left. Hiruzen Seireitei wrote them down and pondered them carefully. Amidst this whirling smoke, Hiruzen Seireitei's expression was grave. He recalled the Nine Tails rampage years ago, in which the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and his wife perished. At that time, the Sharingan shadow was indeed reflected in the Nine Tails' eyes, leading the village elders to suspect the Uchiha clan was behind the attack. From that moment on, the distrust between the village and the Uchiha deepened, and resentment and discontent grew daily. It could be said that the seeds of the Uchiha clan's extermination were sown that very day. But now, the Uchiha clan was almost entirely wiped out, with only Sasuke, the last surviving member, and Itachi Uchiha, a former S-rank rogue ninja. Hiruzen knew perfectly well that the man with the spiral pattern mask from last night couldn't possibly be either of those 2 Uchiha. Therefore, was the Nine Tails rampage related to this man with the spiral pattern mask, and had the village truly wronged the Uchiha clan? Hiruzen Seireitei was filled with dread. It was as if, for many years, a Crimsona had been watching Konoha from the shadows, a terrifying conspiracy looming over the village. And only today had a mask slowly emerged from beneath the surface. Who was he? Who was that man in the spiral patterned mask? The Sharingan emanating from the mask was extraordinary. It was the Mangekyou Sharingan. Who is it? Who in the history of the Uchiha clan possessed the Mangekyou Sharingan? Hiruzen Seireitei stopped puffing on his pipe, his sparse eyebrows furrowing, his cloudy pupils narrowing. A terrifying name suddenly surfaced in his mind, Uchiha Madara. The demon that crawled out of the abyss of death from the old era. Wasn't that Uchiha Madara, whom the ninja world believed to be dead, yet whose body had vanished without a trace? Could it be that he wasn't dead? If it was Uchiha Madara, then it wouldn't be hard to explain why he possessed terrifying power in the Mangekyou Sharingan, and why he harbored the deepest malice towards Konoha. His self-proclaimed identity as a demon crawling out of death also perfectly matched. The more Hiruzen Seireitei thought about it, the more plausible it seemed, and the more terrified he became. He felt he had touched upon the truth. To some extent, he had indeed deduced the truth. First there were demons, then Hueco Mundo, and now even the dead were jumping out. So, were demons or humans causing trouble in the shadows? Exhausted, Hiruzen Seireitei turned his pipe upside down, walked to the broken window, and gazed at the statues of the dead Hokage. A pang of envy stirred within him. Kakashi locked the door and sat cross-legged on the tatami mat, motionless for a long time. Since returning home last night, he had been like a possessed statue, the phrase echoing repeatedly in his mind, "I am a demon who crawled back from the abyss of death in the old era." This phrase seemed to possess some strange magic, reverberating deep within Kakashi's mind, like the spiral-patterned masked man who hadn't left but remained a whispered presence deep within his consciousness. A demon who crawled back from the abyss of death? Translated, it meant, I died, and I came back to life? It perfectly matched Obito Uchiha's life. When Obito died, half his body was smashed off. If he had survived, wouldn't he have been crawling on one hand and one foot? Moreover, that motionless Sharingan, with its eerily overlapping windmill pattern, was exactly. Kakashi Hatake stood up from the ground, stretching his stiff and numb body. He walked to the mirror, removed his eye patch, and let the Sharingan rotate to reveal the windmill pattern. He carefully looked at the eye in the mirror, his voice slightly hoarse as he muttered to himself, so similar. Why would 2 eyes be so unusually similar? There was only one answer, these 2 eyes originally belonged to the same person. Kakashi swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, a chill running down his spine. He thought of the ever-present little yellow flower on Rin Nahora's grave, and his scalp tingled with unease. Kakashi automatically conjured up countless images in his mind. The only thing that gave him a sliver of hope was that when he looked closely at that figure with black background and red clouds last night, he didn't feel that intense sense of familiarity. However, it's hard to say. After all, Obito's body was half crushed when he died. If he were still alive, his current body might not be entirely original, so it's normal not to feel that familiarity. Kakashi was lost in the storm of his mental deductions, like being caught in a tangled mess of threads, making it difficult to find the right direction. Fortunately, Kakashi knew who to ask for the answer, Orochimaru. Kakashi had seen Orochimaru wearing a black robe with red clouds, confirming it was the uniform of some secret underground organization. For some personal reasons, Kakashi didn't tell Hiruzen Sarutobi about his speculation about the masked man's identity, and Hiruzen Sarutobi, for some considerations, obviously didn't want to reveal his speculation either. Kakashi and Hiruzen Sarutobi couldn't exchange answers, otherwise, they might have been able to piece together a more complete and detailed truth. Clang. 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 The knocking interrupted Kakashi's thoughts, pulling him back from his self-doubting reverie to the cold reality. Kakashi put on his mask and headband, pushed open the door, and saw a black umbrella, under which stood Kaguya Nami. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" Kaguya Nami had a pleasant smile on her face. Kakashi was puzzled. Were he and Kaguya Nami that close? What did she mean by speaking to him like a good friend? "I'm very sorry to bother you, but I don't know many people in Konoha, and I'm very concerned about what happened last night, so..." Kaguya Nami looked into Kakashi's eyes and said sincerely and apologetically, "Could you tell me what the person who committed the crime last night was wearing? I suspect he might have come with her Kusagakure." Because she was late, the man with the spiral-patterned mask had already left when Kaguya Nami arrived at the scene, and the two of them had just missed each other and hadn't been able to take a picture. Afterwards, Kaguya Nami overheard some information at the scene, but ninjas are very tight-lipped, and the grass village couldn't find out the details. So they had to come to Kakashi for verification. Kakashi immediately came up with a logical explanation. He stepped aside and invited Kaguya Nami into the room. Hanafuji Sadara, being perceptive, put away his umbrella and waited outside the door. "You said you suspected that person came with your grass village, what do you mean?" Kakashi pressed Kaguya Nami as soon as he entered. "Can you tell me what he was wearing first?" Kaguya Nami asked knowingly, her eyes glancing at a short sword hanging on the wall, her index finger habitually touching the bridge of her nose. Perhaps it was a side effect of playing Aizen Sasuke. Even without her glasses, Kaguya Nami would occasionally touch the bridge of her nose. Chapter 145 Kaguya Nami is ready to win without lifting a finger. Black background with red clouds, spiraling red eyes. It really is, Toby. After listening to Kakashi's description, Kaguya Nami had the answer in her heart. Her brows furrowed slightly, and a rare shadow of gloom appeared on her delicate and sunny face as she said, "It's Toby. I've seen him before, Toby?" Kakashi repeated, "Where did you see him?" "Near the grass ninja village, wearing this kind of black background with red clouds. There were two people there, one was Toby, and the other was half buried in the ground, only his upper body was showing, his head seemed to be growing out of a pitcher plant. I could only see half of his dark face." According to Kaguya Nami's description of the scene that day, he had discovered Hisoka's trail and was tracking him in the shadows when he inadvertently glimpsed these two people. "I found their movement suspicious, so I secretly observed them for a while. I clearly heard the pitcher plant call the spiral-patterned mask Abi," Kaguya Nami added, her expression slightly grave. "I didn't pay much attention at the time and left. Later, when I continued to pursue Hisoka, I heard him reveal that he chose to betray the village because he received an invitation from a very secretive and interesting organization. He even invited me to go with him." "You suspect?" "Yes, I now suspect that Hisoka was invited by those two to join their organization." Kaguya Nami was definitely a master of fabricating lies. Even if Kakashi confronted her later, he would hardly find any flaws in her words. 9 parts truth and 1 part falsehood. Apart from a slight fabrication in the process, the result was 100% pure. "What is this organization called?" Kakashi asked, finding the clues provided by Kaguya Nami extremely valuable. "Akatsuki." Kaguya Nami answered decisively, "The darkness will eventually be dispelled, and the dawn is about to break." Kakashi immediately understood the meaning behind Tobi's first words when he left, recalling the phrase. Why do you think Tobi came with the grass village? Kakashi pressed for the crucial question. Intuition. Kaguya Nami narrowed her eyes and said coldly, this year, many pitcher plants have sprouted in the grass village's fields, and those white-skinned monsters have been found to possess plant-like properties. There's also that black head with a pitcher plant on it, and on my way here, I had a vague feeling that someone was watching me. Kaguya Nami scratched her head somewhat embarrassedly. Sorry, my brain isn't very sharp, you might not understand, but I just have a gut feeling that this organization is monitoring the grass village, and after the grass village sent me to seek help from Konoha, Tobi likely followed me all the way. Kaguya Nami inadvertently labeled herself as not very sharp, a label that was perfect, equating to being easily swayed by fallacies and heresies, planting the seeds for future missteps. No, your intuition is very sharp. Kakashi, a ninja who relied on his brain for offense, quickly integrated the information into his mind and arrived at the same intuition as Kaguya Nami. Don't blame yourself, the casualties in Konoha can't be attributed to you. Kakashi comforted Kaguya Nami, then, following the information she provided, he thought deeper. It seems that Kusagakure's request for help from Konoha was exactly what they anticipated. What they wanted was for Kusagakure to ask Konoha for help. This organization has been targeting Konoha from the very beginning. Kusagakure's current situation is entirely their carefully planned scheme, designed to lure Konoha into sending their elite forces into this trap. Kakashi's mind raced, arriving at a chilling conclusion. Kaguya Nami cooperated, her mouth agape in an O shape, shocked by the Akatsuki's malicious intent. What do we do then? Will Konoha still send reinforcements to Kusagakure? Yes, don't worry, Konoha won't abandon its ally. Kakashi patted Kaguya Nami's shoulder, solemnly promising, I'll report this information back immediately, and I'll request the Hokage to allocate a truly elite squad to protect Kusagakure. Since the Akatsuki dared to set a trap using Kusagakure, then Konoha would play along and crush this trap to pieces. Thank you. Kaguya Nami sincerely thanked Kakashi Hatake. To express her sincerity and gratitude, she lifted the broken sword hanging on the wall, gently tracing the crack with her fingertips, and said to Kakashi, when you go to Kusagakure, you can take this sword with you. There is a swordsmith in Kusagakure who has passed down his skills for generations and can reforge your broken sword. My sword was forged by him. Okay. Kakashi thought to himself, Kusagakure really has a lot of things passed down through generations. He nodded, and after seeing Kaguya Nami off, he hurriedly headed towards the Hokage building. What a kind person. Kaguya Nami stood under the black umbrella, watching Kakashi's hurried departure, and praised him with considerable emotion. Hanafuji Sadara silently held up the umbrella, a meaningful smile curving his lips. The last person praised so highly by President Nami was Shimura Danzo, a man whose head is still missing. 2 days later, a small, elite Konoha squad, each member possessing exceptional skills and armed to the teeth, quietly departed Konoha under the cover of night, heading day and night towards Kusagakure. They'd heard there was an Akatsuki ambush there, perfect. Every member of the squad wore a sinister, murderous intent. The Oni were currently disorganized, but could they really let humans wreak havoc? The members about to enter the Akatsuki's trap were Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, who had strongly requested to participate, vowing to retrieve the head of the man with the spiral mask, whose name was Tobi. Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja, who had devised the plan, he wanted to personally capture Tobi and remove his mask. Might Guy, the Azure Beast, was chosen by the Hokage to join this operation and was entrusted with high hopes. Before his departure, the Hokage even pulled him aside for a private talk in his office, perhaps to burn his youth and kick the demon who crawled out of the abyss of death back. Yamanaka-fu, a lead Jonin of the Yamanaka clan, Root. Aburame Torun, a lead Jonin of the Aburame clan, Root. Nara Izumi, a lead Jonin of the Nara clan, Anbu. And the 3 Jinan from Kusagakure who silently accompanied them, Hanafuda Sadara, Onizuki Kusunoki, and Kaguya Nami. Although they were returning to Kusagakure's home ground, they had the feeling of just going along to make up the numbers, ready to win without lifting a finger. This feeling was truly wonderful. With a menacing aura and murderous intent, it's unknown whether Tobi and Black Zetsu, who set this trap, are truly prepared to face Konoha's wrath. How many days are left until this small team arrives at the battlefield? P.S. Fill in the blank. Chapter 146. Why do I have no memory of what I did? Day 1 before arriving at the battlefield. Toby, the invisible guardian of Konoha's memorial stone, finds Black Zetsu in a secluded mountain cave. Black Zetsu lies on a coffin lid, inside which lies a decomposed, mummified corpse. As the embodiment of Madara Uchiha's will, Black Zetsu always makes time to tend to his coffin, offering incense and paying respects, a perfectly reasonable and dutiful act. Madara Uchiha believed Black Zetsu was his incarnation, and Toby, after Madara's death, remained convinced of Black Zetsu's identity, largely due to this belief. Black Zetsu is deeply immersed in his role, possessing the professionalism of an actor. He maintains a consistent persona both in public and in private, making it difficult to doubt that he is faking his identity. A vortex rose in the air, and a Fei stepped out. He removed the spiral pattern mask from his face, revealing a face that looked as if it had been pieced together from the same fabric. He looked at Black Zetsu, who was diligently tending to the coffin, with annoyance and said, "If you spend less time on this, you might be better at gathering intelligence." What happened? Black Zetsu stopped what he was doing, turned to look at a Fei, who had removed his mask, and frowned slightly, reminding him, "Keep your mask on. Be vigilant at all times. It'll be trouble if someone sees you. The ninja world has too many strange secret techniques that can be used for spying. A mastermind must be constantly alert, and should never remove their mask, whether in public or private. This is a basic code of conduct for a mastermind, and clearly, a Fei failed that. But what could he do? The Mangekyou Sharingan requires the purest love to give birth to the most extreme evil. This condition is extremely demanding. Madara Uchiha carefully selected Obito Uchiha after countless trials and meticulously designed the script to finally get Obito to awaken a Mangekyou Sharingan and completely transform into Toby as his stand-in. Given his intellectual and personality flaws, he couldn't expect too much from him. "Why are you still wearing a mask?" "I'm about to be exposed," Toby complained, but still obediently put the mask back on. "What's going on?" Black Zetsu asked hurriedly. In Black Zetsu's script, Toby was bound to be exposed sooner or later, but this exposure should be close to the completion of the Eye of the Moon plan, infinitely close to a perfect ending. How could it be now? Right now, the Akatsuki organization hasn't even surfaced, the members aren't even full, and the plan hasn't even begun. And you, the mastermind behind the Akatsuki, are about to be exposed first? I was about to ask you what's going on. How come Kakashi suddenly suspects I'm still alive? Toby plucked a hair from his head and glared angrily at Black Zetsu. How was their intelligence work done? I hid so well, I didn't even dare take off my mask while eating or sleeping. How could I be exposed? Why would Kakashi suspect Obito Uchiha isn't dead? It can't be a baseless suspicion, there must be a major problem somewhere. Toby believed this couldn't possibly be him, he'd never shown himself to Kakashi. So, it could only be something he didn't know about. Then he could only ask Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu was stunned, shocked, confused, and bewildered. He put down the offering tools in his hands, sat on the coffin lid, and his eyes darted around nervously. First of all, it couldn't be Obito Uchiha who caused the problem. He's just a corpse in a graveyard. Black Zetsu said confidently. Back then, the corpse that Minato Namikaze and Kakashi brought back was a white Zetsu in disguise, and they didn't notice anything wrong. That corpse has been lying in the graveyard all these years, it couldn't be that caused the problem. Black Zetsu sorted out his thoughts and said slowly, since it wasn't Obito's death that caused the problem, then it can only be that, Toby, your current identity has been suspected by Kakashi. You exposed yourself in front of Kakashi? Black Zetsu asked. No, Toby answered decisively, in all these years, I haven't appeared before him even once. Even on the night of the Nine Tails attack, I was very careful and didn't appear in Konoha's sight. Silence. A huge mystery swirled between the two. After a long pause, Black Zetsu sighed deeply and said ominously, I told you not to keep going to deliver those little yellow flowers every now and then. You're Obito now, not Uchiha Obito. Doing things that don't suit your identity will naturally arouse suspicion. Obito gritted his teeth resentfully. You mean, Kakashi saw me when I went to the grave? And then he suspected I was Uchiha Obito? Black Zetsu wasn't entirely sure, but this was the most likely explanation. You, Kakashi, and Nahorin are the closest of friends. Even if you were wearing a mask, or even if you turned to ashes and appeared before Kakashi, he might not fail to recognize you. Moreover, there are often little yellow flowers at Nahorin's grave. Kakashi might not have thought much of it at first, but if he glimpsed you at some point and connected the two events, then he might really start to have suspicions and connections. Black Zetsu frowned. It might not have been at the gravesite, it could have been something else you don't know about. But it's obvious that he must have seen you somewhere before he started to suspect Obito. Abe frowned deeply. He was confident he hadn't appeared before Kakashi, but Black Zetsu's analysis was so logical. Perhaps he had inadvertently revealed himself. He had been visiting the graveyard more often lately, but he felt things might not be so simple. So, what do we do now? Abe asked, patting his throbbing head. While Kakashi is still in the suspicion stage, dispel his dangerous thoughts. Black Zetsu drew a line on his neck with his thumb, his voice sinister. Find an opportunity to kill him. Abe's nails scraped counterclockwise along the Rasengan on his mask, his crimson Sharingan swirling eerily. He uttered only a cold word through clenched teeth. The day before arriving at the battlefield, news from Konoha had been circulating for a day before finally reaching Black Zetsu's ears through the network established by White Zetsu. Still in that cave, White Zetsu, delivering the message, swayed unsteadily as he sank into the ground, while Black Zetsu stared at Abe with a dark expression. You say you don't know how you were exposed? Are you kidding me? You turned Konoha upside down. Arrogant, domineering, and tyrannical. These three words combined aren't enough to describe what you did that night. You blatantly stole a buck of seals, committed a horrific massacre in full view of everyone, and then left with those two lines, exaggerating your actions. Guess how Kakashi recognized you? Black Zetsu glared fiercely at Toby. If Toby wasn't indispensable to his plan, he would have strangled this idiot who was pretending to be stupid. Toby looked up at his spiral-patterned mask, beneath which lay a bewildered face. What did I do? Why do I have no memory of it? Chapter 147. We still have a chance to turn the tide. In the dark cave, deathly silence reigned. A coffin lay across the center, flanked by Uchiha Madara's will avatar, and Uchiha Madara's substitute, an extremely oppressive atmosphere swirling between them. The mystery was solved. No, the mystery shattered. The culprit was none other than Toby himself. Black Zetsu was furious. His script had a major flaw from the start, and how could he salvage it? Toby was equally furious. He had no memory of his actions, and he had been framed? If I said that person wasn't me, would you believe me? Toby shuddered. Someone was impersonating him, stirring up trouble, ruining his reputation. Do you think I'd believe you? Black Zetsu gritted his teeth. The information White Zetsu had just relayed was vivid. The person's mask revealed a Mangekyou Sharingan. The black and red cloud clothing and the spiral-patterned mask were easy to make, but every Mangekyou Sharingan was recorded in Black Zetsu's little notebook. Currently, only 3 remain in the ninja world: Uchiha Itachi, 2, Abe, 1. And only these 3 remain, because the Uchiha clan has unfortunately all died out, so he has no one to suspect. Uchiha Sasuke, a good-for-nothing who wiped out his entire clan and opened a one-tomo Sharingan, could never possibly open the Mangekyou Sharingan in his life. Hatake Kakashi, not a descendant of Indra, that Sharingan would only be a huge burden for him. How could he possibly be qualified to open the Mangekyou Sharingan? Abe swallowed, feeling a sense of injustice that he couldn't explain himself and couldn't clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. He fiercely scratched at the mask with his fingernails, unexpectedly breaking a corner of the mask. Crack! The crisp sound of breaking connected the two people's thoughts. Uchiha Fugaku's corpse. Black Zetsu and Toby exclaimed in unison. It was the Gotei 13. The Gotei 13 stole that corpse to impersonate you. Black Zetsu blurted out. Toby was furious, almost exploding with anger. If he had known the Gotei 13 wanted to ruin his reputation, how could he have tolerated them taking the corpse? We were tricked by the Gotei 13. They already knew about Akatsuki's existence. They're forcing us to emerge from the shadows. They want to be the only organization in the ninja world hiding behind the scenes. Black Zetsu put himself in the mastermind's shoes, realizing that they were starting to suppress and eliminate their own kind. Black Zetsu's face turned green with rage. Back then, he had compromised and tolerated, allowing the Gotei 13 to easily take the corpse. No wonder they couldn't tell him what they wanted with a corpse. Of course they couldn't tell him. Aizen Sasuke was laughing back then, couldn't help but laugh. Black Zetsu was outsmarted for the first time in 1,000 years, a truly novel experience. Moreover, he was completely outmaneuvered in the subsequent planning. Consider this, the Akatsuki planned a straightforward, head-on confrontation with the Gotei 13, a recruitment test, while the Gotei 13, disguised as Akatsuki, used deception and framing to subtly expose them. In terms of cunning, treachery, and despicable tactics, the Akatsuki's actions seemed like those of a naive and inexperienced fool, while the Gotei 13 were the ancient monsters. Black Zetsu and Toby exchanged a glance, their teeth grinding. After a thorough, typical, completely wrong process, completely right answer, analysis, Black Zetsu and Toby both understood, they had finally glimpsed the truth. How to break this? A chilling sense of dread, shrouded in conspiracy, silently seeped into Black Zetsu and Toby. They exchanged a gloomy, angry glance. This bitter pill could only be swallowed, they simply couldn't explain it to Konoha face to face. That's terrible. That squinty-eyed guy must have been mocking me. Toby gritted his teeth, tearing another piece of his mask. Black Zetsu's face burned too. Was it designed by that Aizen Sasuke? I was almost fooled by his bespectacled, good guy appearance. The worst kind of person is that. Silence, a suppressed and awkward silence. Don't worry, we still have a chance to turn things around. Black Zetsu chuckled sinisterly. Toby calmed himself slightly and echoed Black Zetsu, that's right, the opportunity lies in Kusagakure. 3 days before arriving at the battlefield, Black Zetsu and Toby sat cross-legged on the coffin lid, simultaneously opening their eyes. A chilling light flashed in their eyes. A pitcher plant sprouted from the ground, revealing a bald head. There's movement in Kusagakure. After waiting for so many days, good news has finally arrived. Is it confirmed that the Gotei 13 has appeared in Kusagakure? Toby asked impatiently. White Zetsu 120, emerging from the ground, stretched slightly. Compared to the other White Zetsu, he lacked the frivolous and idiotic aura, appearing exceptionally composed and cold. He spoke clearly, I saw it with my own eyes. It was a man wearing a black and white robe, with a short sword at his waist, and his eyes were always narrowed to slits. He matches one of the members of the Gotei 13 in the intelligence. Only him? Black Zetsu asked in a hoarse voice. Yes, only him alone. White Zetsu 120 answered without hesitation. Black Zetsu and Toby exchanged a glance. 2 against 1, it's a sure thing. This squinty-eyed guy will definitely be captured alive this time. The two stood up simultaneously, their black robes with red cloud patterns fluttering without wind. Remember, keep him alive. Black Zetsu instructed Toby, his body turning into a puddle of black mud and sinking into the ground. Don't worry, I won't let this squint-eyed guy die so easily, Toby sneered, a vortex that appeared out of nowhere in the air sucking him in. White Zetsu 120 stood there, looking at the now empty cave, a strange smile suddenly curving his lips. His right arm split into rings of flesh, and his white scythe shattered the coffin lid in front of him. Inside the coffin lay a rotting skeleton. White Zetsu 120 reached inside, grabbing the puddle of mud and rubbing it between his fingers until it turned to powder, with tiny plant fragments falling out. The coffin didn't contain Uchiha Madara's body. It was just a White Zetsu's rotting corpse lying in its place. Uchiha Madara's real body had long been moved and hidden, which was indeed Black Zetsu's doing. This situation was entirely within Chairman Nami's expectations. White Zetsu 120 tossed away the debris, his body sinking back into the ground and leaving. Day 4 before arriving at the battlefield, on the road. Day 5 before arriving at the battlefield. Upon arriving at the battlefield, the battle horn sounded. Chapter 148. Why is the air so quiet? The Konoha squad, having traveled day and night, arrived near Kusagakure. As planned, they split into 2 teams. One team followed Kaguya Nami into Kusagakure via the main road, a performance intended for the Akatsuki, who had set a trap, to signal the Konoha had taken the bait. The other Konoha team remained hidden on the outskirts, waiting for the signal to engage before launching a surprise attack on the treacherous Akatsuki. Inside the temporary reception area in Kusagakure, Kakashi Hatake, being personally received by Kusagakure's highest leader, Moriakaji, asked, has news of our entry into the village reached Akatsuki by now? Thank you so much for Konoha's support. We in Kusagakure have been living in constant fear these past few days. This terrifying organization that appeared out of nowhere has gone too far. Look at what they've done to our underground space. Akaji Mori's face was flushed, veins bulging, and his eyes were sunken and dark. His expression was a complex mix of worry, fear, and anger, vividly conveying the grievances and repression he felt from being persecuted by the Akatsuki. The Konoha ninja were deeply moved, feeling a strong sense of empathy. The Akatsuki member, Tobi, had committed heinous crimes in Konoha, and Konoha felt an equal desire to tear him apart. Recently, many Kusagakure ninja have gone missing. They've probably all fallen victim to these white-skinned monsters. Akaji Mori lifted a mirror, reflecting what appeared to be swarms of white mayflies in the dark underground. White-skinned humans, all with identical faces, numbering in the dozens, perhaps even hundreds, their white skin staining the empty, dark, and tranquil underground soil, a horrifying sight. So many? The Konoha ninja gasped. A mass of stark white skin, bald heads, and identical features crammed together was still quite unsettling, causing a strong sense of physical discomfort. Being watched by hundreds of eyes from underground, it's almost a certainty that the news of the Konoha ninja falling into a trap will be relayed back to the Akatsuki. Akaji Mori scratched the goosebumps on his neck, seemingly doubting the strength Konoha had sent. He asked hesitantly and haltingly, "Won't there be any problems next?" Hatake Kakashi frowned in thought, and the Anbu-jun and Nara Shizuku behind him answered for him, reassuring Akaji Mori's worries. "He thinks we've fallen into a trap, but little does he know, a trap can turn into bait again. The transformation between prey and hunter often happens in an instant." That's good, that's good." Upon hearing this, Akaji Mori finally forced a smile and said fiercely, "This time, we must capture this damn terrorist organization alive and wipe them out in one fell swoop." At this moment, the Konoha ninjas and the grass ninjas in the room were of one mind, united in their hatred of the enemy, and the friendship index between the allies soared. Kaguya Nami, silently watching from the corner, also smiled faintly. For a moment, she even felt a pang of pity, unwilling to shatter this beautiful trust with Konoha in the future. "What's this mirror?" Hatake Kakashi pointed to the mirror in Akaji Mori's hand, which resembled a liquid fungal carpet. In fact, the other Konoha ninja's attention had been focused on this mirror since earlier. "Oh, this is a result of our grass village laboratory," Akaji Mori explained proudly. "The fungal carpets cultivated and propagated in the same batch share and transmit signals with each other through neural technology. Simply put, the vision of all the fungal carpets can be fed back to the fungal carpet on this mirror." Akaji Mori casually fiddled with the mirror screen, and images of various corners of Grass Village switched on it, achieving truly comprehensive and blind spot-free surveillance. It was also thanks to this technology that Grass Village was able to inadvertently discover the existence of those white-skinned monsters underground, Akaji Mori said. In reality, Akaji Mori was telling the truth. The only thing he altered was that the footage might not be real-time, it could be pre-recorded. For example, the underground footage they had just seen was actually a recording from several days ago. The area beneath Kusagakure had long since been cleared, and all the white Zetsu had been weeded and lined up to be sent to the laboratory beneath Hazuki Castle. Furthermore, Akaji Mori slightly embellished the story. There was no such thing as a single batch. The fungal carpets that multiply could link together as many times as they wanted, and control was entirely in the hands of the Kusagakure laboratory, which, of course, had another, unknown name, Technology Development Bureau. "Can some of these fungal carpets be sold to Konoha?" Hatake Kakashi asked. After the demonic calamity, upgrading Konoha's security system had been a top priority. This kind of fungal carpet monitoring was clearly of great strategic value. "No, we hope Kusagakure can share this technology with Konoha as payment for this support." Nara Shizuka interrupted Kakashi. This technology needed to be fully understood and mastered by Konoha before it could be applied to their security system. Akaji Mori pondered for a moment before agreeing to Kakashi and Nara Shizuku's outrageous request, inwardly sneering, "How, it was going to be a gift anyway. It's easier for you to ask for it yourselves." Then, the entire Hidden Leaf Village would be under the 24/7 surveillance of the Technology Development Bureau, or even worse, the Bureau could see whatever it wanted. As for technology sharing and cracking, Akaji Mori wasn't worried at all. To paraphrase Captain Mayuri Kuratsuchi, it's wishful thinking. "This mirror will stay here. Any Akatsuki member appearing within the Grass Village's territory will be instantly detected. Akaji Mori confidently and considerately handed the mirror to Narashizuku. Kaguya Nami followed Akaji Mori out, taking a broken sword from Hatake Kakashi as they left, promising that the Grass Village's ancient swordsmith would reforge it and return a perfect, unprecedented White Fang in a couple of days. This sword, its name, White Fang. Late at night, in a secluded corner of Kusagakure, Black Zetsu slowly emerged from the empty underground, wondering if all the white Zetsu surrounding Kusagakure had skipped work, why none of them had shown up to report to him. Toby also emerged from the vortex of air almost simultaneously, habitually rubbing his spiral mask, a crimson, evil Sharingan gleaming with a dark light. "Where's White Zetsu? Where's that squinty-eyed guy hiding?" Toby asked menacingly. He couldn't wait a second longer. Black Zetsu's heart skipped a beat, as if sensing something was wrong. Where did White Zetsu go? Why was the air so quiet? Suddenly, a streak of lightning tore through the darkness. The swirling blade slicing through the air. Chapter 149. What deep-seated hatred and grudge, Fei's identity can no longer be concealed? The moon hung high. The night sky was like a piece of black cheese, sliced open with a rip, hissing arcs of electricity spilling out and flowing to both sides like viscous juice. A sharp blade flashed, slicing through the black background and red clouds. The crisp sound of tearing cloth. The pleasant sound of sharp blades cutting through muscle. A blood-stained red cloud drifted erratically in the air, spurting blood like rain, a thin, sharp cut tearing through clothing. Black Zetsu retreated violently, a thin, sharp cut splitting open on his chest, diagonally slicing from his abdomen upwards to his fourth ribs. Flesh and blood tore open, soaking his clothes red. Who? Black Zetsu glanced down at the cut on his chest, his dark face coldly looking at Kaguya Nami emerging from the electric current, his brows furrowed into a knot. Not the attire of the Gotei 13. Long pants, a vest, a short-sleeved shirt, and a headband on his shoulders. A ninja from Kusagakure? I'm injured? The one who injured me was just a ninja from a small village. Black Zetsu's face darkened. He ran his finger along the cut, and saw sticky spores growing from the flesh, like viscous glue pulling and tightening the torn skin, forming a hideous white scar. Black Zetsu sensed something was wrong and was about to ask a question when his pupils suddenly narrowed. He saw figures suddenly appearing in the darkness. Black Zetsu swallowed the words he was about to say and uttered another sentence. Toby, we've been ambushed. Toby turned his head, his spiral patterned mask blank, his scarlet eyes reflecting the figures emerging from the darkness. The muscles in his cheeks beneath the mask gradually stiffened. Konoha headbands? Konoha ninjas. Isn't this Kusagakure? For a moment, Toby even doubted whether he and Black Zetsu had entered the wrong village. He swallowed hard, the hairs on his back standing on end, and glanced sideways at Black Zetsu. That gaze seemed to question what exactly was going on. What happened to the Gotei 13? How did we suddenly get surrounded by Konoha ninja? Black Zetsu was furious and embarrassed, his face turning a dark red. Now was not the time to argue or explain. He took a deep breath and snarled, "Get out of here." With that, Black Zetsu sank halfway into the ground. Boom. The ground exploded into a mud dragon, its thick body spinning and pulling Black Zetsu's half-body off the ground. Trying to escape? Dream on. Yamanaka-fu pressed his hands to the ground, his fierce chakra instantly altering the surrounding landscape. Streams of surging mud dragons wrapped around Black Zetsu, while he raised his hands, forming a triangle, aiming at Black Zetsu's evasive back. Ninja art, mind confusion technique. The chakra, imperceptible to the naked eye, was mysterious and invisible, like an invisible all-piercing Black Zetsu's brain. The latter's expression faltered for a moment, his evasion stiffened, and he was caught on the mud in midair, his body being yanked and slammed to the ground. A Fei vanished abruptly from his spot, a vortex emerging from behind him, a kunai aimed straight for his heart. At the critical moment, a blue roar tore through the darkness, ripples spreading through the invisible air, and a fist slammed into the kunai. The explosion was deafening. Might Guy stomped on the ground, shattering it inch by inch, his fist and arm clenching into a menacing knot, a layer of scalding heat rising from his pores. A Fei felt a chill run down his spine, the kunai slipping from his grasp. The intense shock spread from his palm to his arm, leaving it numb. Then he saw a ferocious, green-skinned humanoid beast charge into his chest, a wave of heat washing over him. A sharp elbow, seemingly slow but incredibly fast, struck his chest like a bayonet. Before the elbow even reached him, the air was compressed and exploded, his clothes caved into his chest, his ribs trembled with a faint stinging pain, and his heart pounded violently. A hit to the ribs will break, a hit to the heart will shatter. What a deep grudge. What a deep hatred. The hairs on A.F.'s back stood on end, his chest instantly vaporized into vortex, the force of the elbow's strike piercing through his chest, but the surrounding surging air wave still made his face sting. Might Guy missed his first strike, and immediately twisted his waist, the sound of bones and joints exploding, cracking continuously, fists, elbows, knees, kicks, turning into a storm of wind and rain, endlessly enveloping A.F. The air trembled, his black robe billowed, and in the blink of an eye, clusters of holes bloomed on his body, the vortex-like air quickly filling his entire body. A.F. felt a chill in his heart, his body quickly shrinking into the vortex and disappearing. Not far away, a vortex appeared, and as soon as A.F.'s body emerged, he heard the cry of 1,000 birds. A.F. turned around abruptly, and in his pupils he saw a hand wrapped in arcs of electricity digging at the mask on his face. Abi saw Kakashi remove his eye patch and reveal his Sharingan, and a nameless rage surged within him. Why were these Konoha ninjas relentlessly pursuing him like a pack of mad dogs? Not only did they want to kill him, but they also wanted to destroy his mask. This was too much. Abi was furious. His head and mask blurred to dodge the Chidori attack, while he himself, like a phantom, lunged at Kakashi, strangely passing through Kakashi's body. Kakashi looked at the nothingness that had pierced through his body. Chains appeared on both sides of his body, swinging and rapidly wrapping around him. The chains vibrated rapidly, and Kakashi had no doubt that the moment he was wrapped by those chains, his waist would be snapped and crushed. The tragedy of that night in Konoha was still vivid in his mind. Kakashi's pupils spun rapidly, faint bloodshot veins swirling in his pupils like smoke. He suddenly shrank back, lowered his head, and simultaneously drew a kunai, shooting it behind him. The chain ripped, tearing large patches of white hair into shreds that scattered in the air. 2 bloody patches of scalp were ripped off by the chain, the stinging blood staining the white hair and trickling down the forehead into the eyes. Kakashi didn't blink, his eyes fixed on Obito, his gaze unwavering. Obito turned his head, but couldn't completely dodge. A piece of his mask cracked, about the thickness of a little finger, and blood seeped from his cheek. Their eyes met, both crimson Sharingan eyes rotating simultaneously, a dark, crimson light flickering within them. A subtle connection seemed to penetrate the air, linking their eyes together. It was a feeling that could only be understood, not explained. Obito and Kakashi's pupils contracted simultaneously. Kakashi gritted his teeth silently, but the shape of his lips and tongue clearly spelled out more. Obito, Abi, read the lips. A sharp killing intent flashing in his eyes. He tightened the chains, causing them to twist and swing, the hooks behind him like snakes flicking their tongues, aiming to bite at Kakashi's back. Abi would never allow Kakashi to utter those 2 names aloud. Kakashi's eyes dimmed for a moment. Abi's fierce reaction clearly confirmed his inner answer. A complex expression of pain appeared on his face, and the Sharingan in his pupils suddenly froze, turning into a windmill shape. No matter what you've done, I will definitely bring you back to Konoha. Kakashi let out a suppressed roar from his throat. Abi looked at the Mangekyo Sharingan that appeared in Kakashi's pupils, utterly horrified. He instinctively tried to intangibly disappear from the spot. The vortex in the air seemed to be disturbed, twisting and turning strangely. A's body, which had already been drawn in, suddenly became stuck in the vortex. He pulled sharply, and half of his body disappeared into the vortex, but the remaining arm was suddenly shredded by the vortex. Blood splattered like twisted dough, and the severed arm hung strangely in midair. The red cloud sleeve fell off, revealing a pale arm with jagged and gruesome cuts, blood spraying like rain. The 5 fingers, however, still tugged at the chain out of inertia. Chapter 150 I am the hope of the whole village. The twitching chain snapped, biting towards Kakashi's back, vicious, cruel, and chillingly foul, like the mangled limbs of Konoha that night, about to be torn apart on Kakashi in the next instant. Black Zetsu, submerged in the churning mud, transformed into writhing black mud, rising from the ground, his sinister eyes sweeping across the arena. Tobi's severed arm shocked Black Zetsu. Kakashi's impending death filled Black Zetsu with joy. In short, joy outweighed shock. Yamanaka Fu and Nara Shizuku's eyes widened in horror, At their speed, they couldn't possibly help, only able to stare helplessly with wide, empty eyes. Kakashi! Might Guy roared, turning around, his feet stomping the ground, tearing and scattering debris behind him, billowing smoke. Black Zetsu grinned maliciously, casually clapping his hands, sending thorny wooden spikes piercing the ground, instantly blocking Might Guy's path. The splintering tree branches were shattered into pieces. Might Guy rained down punches, frantically crushing the obstacles, completely ignoring the cuts and lacerations on his arms, abdomen, and thighs, his body covered in blood and splintering wood. He couldn't save Kakashi in time. Kakashi's eyes throbbed with pain, his body staggering forward. He couldn't dodge the fierce wind rushing from behind. As someone with poor physical abilities, that brief clash of eye power had nearly killed Kakashi. If it weren't for Toby's shock and slight panic, Kakashi wouldn't have won in terms of pure power. The Sharingan is still too much of a burden on my body, I'm going to die. A realization dawned on Kakashi's mind. He gritted his teeth and roared, his feet stomping and twisting, his waist contorting, his head snapping, his eyes desperately darting to the side, a flash of lightning. The turbine roared with electric current, scorching the void air. A humanoid figure materialized within the blue arcs of electricity. Kaguya Nami almost perfectly positioned herself in front of Kakashi, blocking his vision. Kaguya Nami hastily blocked the chain with her swords raised, but an invisible thread strangely extended from her right little finger, like a rubber band tightening around the chain. Too slow, too weak. How can this kill anyone? Kaguya Nami thought to herself. If she were the one wielding the chain, Kakashi would be pulverized beyond recognition, there wouldn't be a chance for her to risk her life to save him. Toby, wielding the chain, was like a delicate little girl dancing, it could barely kill a ninja's paper-thin, tofu-like body. The visual impact was insufficient. It made people question Toby's skill level. Kaguya Nami, putting herself in Afei's shoes, casually hooked her little finger, and the wrapped transparent line tightened abruptly. The winding chain suddenly straightened, as if propelled by an invisible force, evolving from a venomous snake into a terrifying python. Its ferocious fangs and massive body slammed into Kaguya Nami's blade. The collision of blade and chain, the immense force causing Kaguya Nami's hands to tremble uncontrollably, the blade slipping from her grasp and spinning diagonally into the ground. The chain grazed the blade, deflected, and like a python whipping its tail, a sharp cracking sound as it lashed Kaguya Nami's chest. Her chest was instantly crushed, her ribs dislocating with a crisp snap. Kaguya Nami squeezed her throat, bit her tongue, and spat out a mouthful of black blood. Then, he flew backward. His feet scraping the ground, his toes barely touching the ground through the soles of his shoes, as he spurted blood and crashed into Kakashi's arms. The fierce and domineering force that struck him felt like being butted in the chest by a wild bull. His chest skin instantly cracked and bled, his muscles were extensively bruised and bleeding, his ribs trembled and cracked, his internal organs shuddered violently, and his blood surged upward, gushing from his mouth and nose. The two bodies slammed into the ground together, sliding several meters along the ground. Kaguya Nami felt Kakashi's heartbeat and controlled the irregular backward convulsions of her spine. When she felt it was enough, she released the force, stopped sliding backward, and coughed up blood as she struggled to crawl off Kakashi and lay down beside him. Kakashi felt a tightness in his chest, as if his internal organs had shifted. He didn't know how many ribs were broken, his lungs throbbed with pain, his vision blurred, and blood gushed from his mouth. He stiffly turned his neck to look at his savior, Kaguya Nami. She was also in a miserable state, her clothes soaked with blood, looking at him, gasping for breath, then spitting out blood. Ho ho, not dead. Kaguya Nami's blood stained her delicate face, but her grimy smile shone like sunlight in the darkness, piercing Kakashi's heart. Just like the long-dead Minato Namikaze, and like Obito Uchiha, whose body was crushed halfway by a boulder. I almost thought I was going to be turned into mincemeat. Kakashi gasped in pain, forcing a smile. He wasn't exaggerating, of the corpses from Konoha that night, none could be pieced back together after the bodies were recovered. Thank you. Kakashi said sincerely, acknowledging Kaguya Nami of Kusagakure as his sworn friend. You've achieved the achievement, the hope of the village, the hope of the village. When the entire village couldn't save Hatake Kakashi's life, you shone like lightning in the darkness, shielding him with your selfless body and saving his life, earning the gratitude of everyone in Konoha today. P.S. Kakashi owes you a life, and Might Guy is willing to repay that debt on Kakashi's behalf. Reward, achievement points 1,500. If there were a favorability indicator, Kakashi's trust and favorability towards Kaguya Nami was soaring to its peak. While the enthusiastic Might Guy breathed a sigh of relief, the favorability was probably bursting out of his head. And he was practically steaming. "You're welcome." Kaguya Nami spat out a mouthful of blood, speaking with equal sincerity. Saving Kakashi was like winning over two characters at once, a super profitable deal. He smiled, revealing a mouthful of blood-stained teeth. "I haven't returned the sword I promised to reforge for you yet. How could I let you die? If you want to thank me, take off your mask and let me see it when you're done." Kaguya Nami was extremely curious about Kakashi's true face. It might be related to a rare hidden achievement. Kakashi and Kaguya Nami exchanged a glance, then simultaneously coughed up blood and laughed loudly. In the darkness, the two wounded men, rendered unable to fight, lay on the ground, their laughter both dazzling and eerie. Might Guy smashed through a pile of thorns, picking up the chain with lingering fear, only to discover that it was riddled with cracks, shattering at the slightest touch. How terrifying, inhuman strength. Might Guy stood in front of Kakashi and Kaguya, while Yamanakafu and Narashizuku also came to protect them. Black Zetsu squinted at the severed arm, Toby, emerging from the whirlpool. Blood was flowing from the severed arm. Toby's eyes swept over it with a gloomy gaze. He looked at a broken chain in Might Guy's hand, and a sense of doubt arose in his heart. Was the chain I swung really that powerful? It almost killed two people with one blow? P.S. I'm always tempted to slack off and be lazy, even though I don't usually miss updates. This might just be the author's inherent weakness, the laziness rooted deep in human evolution. To motivate myself not to be so lazy, I've decided to set a flag and push myself. Bonus chapter rules are as follows: Guardian reward plus 1 chapter, Grandmaster reward plus 2 chapters, Alliance Master reward plus 3 chapters, Silver Mo reward plus 30 chapters, 1 chapter for every 500 average subscriptions, 1 chapter for every 500 monthly votes. The extra update flag is valid for this month only, and will be adjusted monthly depending on the situation. If it's not adjusted, it will be maintained continuously. I've decided to stop being lazy and start growing like crazy. Please vote with monthly tickets and give me a reward. The flag is set for June 16, 2021. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.